Evening and welcome to the January 20th, 2015 meeting of the Long Meadow Select Board. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with announcements. Any board members have any announcements tonight? Stephen, do you have any announcements?
Just that just a reminder that the meals program, the in-house meals program at the Council on Aging is closed for about a month while the kitchen's renovated. The Meals on Wheels program will continue through an agreement with East Long Meadow. So if you get Meals on Wheels, you will continue to get them. But if you go down in Greenwood for lunch, we'll be closed for about a month, and we will send out notification through various media that when the kitchen's ready to reopen.
Good. Okay.
And with the, just a reminder about snow and ice removal on sidewalks and our bylaw, it's with the warmer temperatures during the day and the freezing temperatures at night, I know it's sometimes tough to keep up with. Just a reminder residents to be careful walking out there, but also try and take care of ice on the sidewalks in front of your house. Yeah.
Stephen, but we still do have the sand salt mixture available down at just outside the DPW yard for residents.
I think, yeah, down on the outside the gate.
Right.
There's some sand and salt out there.
That's next time I'll do my announcements first, because you guys just took everything off my sheet of paper. Thank you. Yeah, and I was going to mention that too. The sand pile is very popular right now. They're usually lining up in double to get that. By the way, folks, if you do go to the sand pile, make sure you take a bucket and a shovel, because there's no utensils available, but there is plenty of salt and sand mixed down there for you. And again, on the ice, it's treacherous this year, and it's relentless. Now, I guess the Select Board Secretary this afternoon told me she was out at lunchtime and spotted a lady or a person that had fallen on the ice by her automobile and stopped to help the person. The person was fine. They just couldn't get up. They couldn't get traction to get up, so they literally had to move her on over into the snow where she could get traction to get back on her feet. So be careful, folks. It is bad out there. Resident comments? No resident comments?
I was invited here on behalf of Board of Health.
Okay, good. Thank you. We'll get to you in just a second then. Select Board comments. All right.
I was going to talk about something else, but this arrived in my email, and it didn't arrive in my town email, which threw me. And that's the MMA legislative package. And they're asking us to try to contact our state representative and our state senator on these issues. And some of these bills, I think, are really valuable, and I just don't know if we should be doing this as a board, and they're not giving us much time to do this in, because they said by the end of the month, and this is our last meeting, but some of the bills that are coming up that seem, I think, interesting. One is marketing information to be included in municipal tax bills. The other is assisting municipal and district ratepayers on what the costs and financial impacts of proposed environmental rules and regulations will be, and some open meeting law exemptions and issues that I know we've been struggling with, such as with executive session, and the vets benefits. I highlighted those, and of course some really important issues in regards to the unemployment insurance reforms that I know the town's been talking about, wanting to see those go through. So I'm not sure if we should go through these and try to decide what we're going to support, or ask our town manager to try to see what's really relevant. Maybe we could pass information on to him and then have him try to ask Representative Ash and Senator Lesser to support some of these bills going forward, because I think it would help the town and sort of fits in with our goals of trying to do more legislative work. So I'm sorry about the late handout, but I literally just got it this afternoon in my private email.
So we don't need to take action on it right now, though, do we?
No, but they said other members, let's see, they want us to try to get more sponsors for these bills, and people have until January 30th to sign as co-sponsors. So really, it's between now and January 30th, which isn't much time at all.
And that's we're not even going to have our next meeting before then.
No, and and we'll be at the MMA, but
Okay.
if there's, there's a few that I've highlighted, there's some, I'm not even sure if it would be relevant for us, but maybe we should just all send our opinions, I don't know how to handle it, Richard, to the
Yeah.
town manager to see, so we don't, again, fall
Right.
I
behind.
can certainly reach out to our legislators and find out if they've seen this and their views on it. I mean, a call for co-sponsors is just, I mean, everyone's introducing legislation at the beginning of the session here, so it's not, this by no means, not taking action by January 30th forecloses the town's ability to express its views on this or push legislators to take one position or the other to endorse or advocate on behalf of anything. So I don't want to rush to do something without better understanding the impact of these bills on our town, but I can certainly reach out and see if Representative Ash and Senator Lesser have a better understanding of these.
Okay, so do tasks then. Stephen, okay, and you'll report back to us on what you find out, Stephen?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Alex? Were you through, Mary? Excuse me.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, on the sort of along the vein of statewide issues, I think an issue that we ought to look at as it's going forward is the Olympic bid. I know it's in Boston, but one of the impacts I think the Olympics in Boston would likely have is state funds. I think it is in Long Meadow's interest. I think it's in the interest of everybody in Western Massachusetts, at a minimum, to make sure that no public funds go toward this Boston Olympics, or else we could have a big dig size project that doesn't benefit us in the least. And I think that's something that we have to be looking at a future meeting.
Yeah, that's going to be a major issue. I don't know how you would actually prevent private funds from somehow getting into that, do you?
Referendum. They're
okay.
already discussing
They're already-
having a referendum on
Yeah.
that very question.
Okay, good. How about other comments? Paul?
Speaking of ice, I was at Turner Park today to do a little dog walking in the parking lot, or what is the parking lot where people go walk in the back, is nothing but a sheet of ice. And when I called the DPW to see if they salt or sand that, they said they don't. I really think we have a concern for residents. If you drive down there somewhere between today and the next time the things start to thaw, there is no traction in the parking lot, and I don't know if we have a liability. I know if we don't charge people to use the fields and so forth. But I do know that when it comes to Bliss Park, we kind of plow that driveway closest to the house on Bliss Road so people can go walk their dogs in the back. I'd like to at least have it looked at, potentially see if there's something that the town can throw some sand down or something. There's a great number of people that go back there, and if you're worried about sidewalks being icy, then this should be a priority then in terms of risk. The other thing I wanted to make a comment on is, I think it was 3 meetings ago, I asked about the IT subcommittee and asked if there had been any progress with it. And the last I was told at that meeting was there was nothing still in terms of meetings. And it's been another 3 meetings down the road. And I'd like to have a discussion item placed on a future agenda to discuss the IT committee. We're going through the budget process right now. That specific IT committee is supposed to work with our IT director to develop a budget and lay out the future plans of the IT department, working with the IT director. And we haven't seen anything. And if we're not going to have a committee that meets and functions, then perhaps we should add or advertise for more folks to be on it and to be able to get a quorum. I really think that since it has never met, at least because I've never seen a posting outside the original meeting where the members were advised on how it would work and they elected a chair and vice chair and so forth. I think the discussion point should be is, do we actually even need it? It was supposed to be advisory. There hasn't been anything done, and I think there should be a discussion with the school committee, because I don't see the IT, I see it more as it's a function of the schools now as opposed to the town side, and that was the danger. But this committee was supposed to create that balance or help with it and so forth. But if it's never met, I'd like to have a discussion with the school committee as to whether or not we actually even need it at this point in time.
Anyone else? Let me get clarification on one thing, Paul. I can get it on the agenda, but I lost track on, who do we want to address this issue?
There's two issues. The IT subcommittee or the IT committee is supposed to be working on with the IT director in terms of laying out what the town needs are going to be for the future, and obviously that hasn't happened. So I think the discussion should be with the school committee to dissolve the committee. And I also think we then need to look at the IT agreement, which was this committee was supposed to be that kind of in the middle of the road group that was going to make sure that that the IT was heading down the right path, because there was a lot of concerns with the combination of the town and school IT departments.
Right.
And this committee was supposed to be one of those buffers to really make sure that those concerns or fears were allayed and so forth. And if they haven't met, then obviously nothing's been addressed. And I'm not saying there's issues. I'm saying that there's no need to have a committee. In other words, that whole document that was done, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago, Mark, I can't, at least 3.
Right.
That whole document that was done, I think, should be reviewed.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Richard, you want to have a discussion on this now, but the intent was that the IT committee would be advisory to this joint town-school committee
Right.
IT department, and it doesn't appear that it's performed that function. I think that's Paul's comment, I guess.
Yeah. Yes, Marie.
Yeah, I worked on the MOU, and my understanding is the IT, like you said, was advisory, and it was sort of trying to look at what the next generation or 2 generations out, because we have so many people in town that are very talented, and I am disappointed they haven't met, but I'm not sure if they were there to really overlook the MOU and to work on the 2 sides. I think that was something that the staff was supposed to be doing, and we were supposed to be hearing if there were problems, but the IT was, like when we talked about the wireless network, it was referred to them as well as cable, and what our needs are in the way of fiber going to be in the upcoming years, so we can start budgeting for it. So I hate to throw it out because I think it has value. It just has to get up and get moving. How we're going to do that, I don't know.
Let's see if we can get to the bottom of it. I can get into and see what the enabling language was when we put the committee together.
Yeah, Maria, I thought they were supposed to work on approve the budget too, or the capital expenditures at least.
My understanding is actually when I attended one of those first meetings was that as software came through, it was supposed to be vetted through this group to make sure that departments weren't just buying software and that it fit within a general plan. And so I think Richard's right. We should probably look to see what the value, what they're supposed to be doing and what they are doing.
Yeah. You got something, Steve?
Well, I just, for whatever it's worth, we've tried at the staff level to get the committee together, and we did have one meeting, but not enough IT committee members showed up to constitute a quorum. And that was that was a while ago, and that was the last time we were able to get them together to even get momentum to get a meeting scheduled. I think to some extent it's not a function of the committee not being properly, conceived. It's obviously the people that are on the committee just either don't have time or aren't fully aware of the role should be. Some time ago we did propose, I don't know if it was a bylaw or a policy about being able to recall committee members if they did not want to serve, and the board I think declined to approve that proposal. Maybe if you really want to get at the core issue of committee performance or non-performance, it's usually the membership of the committee that is at the heart of it. And so I guess I would just throw that out there to put in the mix as well about maybe revisiting that issue of, because we had a request from a different committee to have a member removed because they essentially were MIA. I mean, they weren't responding to emails or anything, and we didn't do that. Maybe it's a time to now it's 2 committees that we have an issue.
Yeah. Well, I think between now and next meeting that you and I should be able to get to the bottom of this and get something back to the board that's reasonable. So we can go that angle, Paul, and see if it brings forth what you're after. I don't know exactly who we need to bring in, so let's see what it is and we'll see where it goes from there. Anything else? No? Okay, town manager report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of catch-up items I don't need to review. We did talk to the folks at the request from Glen Meadow Condo Association. We did meet with them and review what they're looking for and some of the challenges about accepting streets, and basically it's on their end to decide what they want to do for next steps. The board had previously said they wanted to see a proposed right-of-way plan, and we presented that information to the representatives of the association. I also know, we talked about our Green Communities grants and our streetlight purchase. Things continue to be, I'm not going to say stalled, but we are in the process of working on a new agreement with our consultant, George Woodbury, on kind of the next phase of his work. The first phase that we thought would get us to a reasonable, what they call net book value or purchase price for the streetlights from the utility company, did not actually end up doing that because the utility company is, the more we learned about their methodology for the lights, the more we realized that the methodology is possibly flawed, and we along with other communities may have been overcharged. So the next phase, based on his recommendation, is to look at is try to get more information on the methodology, and also perhaps see what other communities may be similarly affected, and build a coalition to see if we can work as a group to push the utility company to be more reasonable. I have kept our grantor in the loop on our progress, and so the issue of timelines or anything is not an issue right now. They are aware of what we're doing, but it's frustrating. But I don't think, it's certainly there would be, he's back of the envelope calculated the payback period, and there is a payback. I mean, it's longer than it would be if the book value was calculated correctly, but there still is a payback period. I just think at this time I'd be hard pressed to proceed with a purchase on a price that we don't know for sure is accurate. And there will probably come a time in the next few months where we'll be faced with a decision to push this issue further, perhaps to the Department of Public Utilities, or change gears and pursue a different project. But we're not there yet. I don't think. We need to learn more about the valuation and work with the utility company to see if we can get them to move on their price.
Yes. Yeah, hold on, Alex.
I've been following this issue, and I was interested in seeing this report when I saw it on the agenda. It was a year ago. I went back and looked at my notes. Mark Gold and I both wrote something about this issue a year ago, and I don't know, it seems like the way you're describing it, Stephen, we really are stalled. I mean, if what we're talking about is working on an agreement with our consultant to come up with more calculations to lead to a coalition to somehow pressure the electric company to be more reasonable, I mean, we're a long ways away from accomplishing anything with the grant, which is one of the obvious concerns that we had last year. And I think that's the reason why the vote was 3-2. And it kind of made me think at the time that the majority was being overly bullish on this project because it had such obvious contingencies. And given that the contingencies that we feared a year ago are so much worse now, I mean, it seems like the time is to reverse course. I mean, normally when you have some grant money, the idea is to put it to fairly immediate use. I don't know, it sounds like you think we're not there yet. I mean, like, how much longer would we have to wait before you think we would be there?
I think we just need more information. It's when we drill down deeper into this and we discover that we may have been overcharged in past years, I feel like it's my obligation to investigate that and see if we can get to the bottom of whether or not we were overcharged. I mean, that's already money that's been spent and money that's been taken from the taxpayers. And so I feel like we have an obligation to investigate that. And these types of things that involve the Department of Public Utilities, utility companies, I'm sure, as you know, take forever.
No, I
And-
get that, but I mean, I guess my concern is, that, I mean, when it was presented, I mean, you presented us a PowerPoint. It was heavily slanted toward the streetlights purchase. This project has been in the hopper for years. I recall you saying it was clearly the best project. So to me, what that sounded like was it had been vetted and we're ready to go with it. I mean, this seems like we're a long ways from that point. So, I mean, we've got what is it, $155,000. You know, why not look to other uses of this money rather than having it sitting there?
I in principle agree with you, and as I said, we may come to a point, but when you say it was vetted, the same consultant.
No, I mean,
Can I?
No, I assume you had vetted it. That's how it was represented to us.
The report that was prepared, I think, in 2010 by the same consultant, George Woodbury, who is the leader in the nation in doing these things, works all over the country, said, here's the book value and here's your payback period and the recommendations to proceed, and nothing really happened because there was an upfront cost to the town. Once we got the grant, we applied for the grant largely based on that report from 2010. So when we retained Mr. Woodbury to be our consultant, I think he also thought that we would have this thing already done by now. It's only as the more he drilled down into it and realized, so then we requested a new updated purchase price. And under my understanding is under the law, if the town wants to buy the streetlights, the municipality or the utility has to sell it to them. And that's why when we got this price that was exorbitant, you know, red flags went up. And so what we thought we knew when we said we were going to do this, including Mr. Woodbury, to what we know now is very, very different. But we know enough now to know that something isn't right with that either the net book value or the prices that we've been paying, but we don't know enough to know why. And like I said, I think we need to, it's going to cost us some money to find out why, and I've requested from the Green Communities to be able to use some of our grant funds to retain Mr. Woodbury to further that investigation. You know, I don't know, we don't really have another appropriation to do that, and that's
How much is that going to be?
I've requested to use an additional $15,000, and I think we've spent $7,500 with George. And again, I mean, I wish the outcome that we had gotten from the initial round was, here's the here's the project, here's the silver platter, here's the payback. But what we found was, like I said, we may have been overcharged, and I have a very difficult time saying let's just walk away from that information without investigating it further. I mean, if we want to change gears, I mean, the fundamentals of the purchase of the street lights, the conversion LED, and using the grant to offset that, those are all still there, but they are all assuming a reasonable net book value purchase price, and we don't have that baseline to go from. So, like I said, even if we decide to change projects, I would still recommend pursuing this matter with the utility company further.
Before can you just clarify what you mean by overcharge? Because we haven't paid anything. I mean, what is it, overcharging electricity, or it was just more than what was originally anticipated for the cost of the poles?
It gets complicated, and I don't know that I'm going to do the greatest job, but the short of it is we pay a lease price, a set lease price per street light.
Yep.
Now that lease price, and I want to say it's $7 a street light or something like that.
It varies by the type of light.
Varies by type of light, but it adds up to a significant amount of money. Well, that lease price per light is obviously a derivative of a formula that has multiple factors in it, and largely cost to provide the service. And one of the factors in that formula is depreciation, the depreciation of the lights. Well, sometime between 2010 and 2014, WMECO went to the Department of Public Utilities and was granted a change in their depreciation schedule and how they depreciate their equipment, which affected the value of the streetlights. It made the value of the streetlights go way up. And when we asked them, well, did you change your methodology for the leasing of the streetlights? We didn't really get a satisfactory answer. And George has gone through and looked at DPU decisions, and he understands the formulas in a very detailed way, which is why he's very valuable and very sought after. He feels their methodology for calculating our lease rates is flawed, going back a few years. And so we don't know the scope of how much we could have possibly been overcharged, but he feels it's a substantial amount of money. If his theory is correct and the methodology is bad, it's a substantial amount of money, and there are other communities similarly affected. And so, like I said, I think this is something we owe the taxpayers to pursue and get more information on, because we can't get to the streetlight project, I don't believe, until we resolve this issue.
Mark?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to know what clarify that term, because I didn't know what we're overcharged.
Yeah, and Stephen, one piece of information before I get with what I was going to say that you don't know. Separate from George Woodbury, we had, I won't say contracted, we had agreed with a separate consultant who was working for the city of Springfield to look for overcharges for the city of Springfield, and we agreed to let him look for overcharges for the town of Longmeadow. And so I can go back and get you that. So there's a history of, and those overcharges were primarily not based on depreciation schedule, but primarily based on, if the tariff says it's $8.20 for a 400-watt sodium vapor lamp, and in fact that lamp is a 300-watt, incandescent, then it should have been charged instead of $8.25 or $8.50 at $7.10, all those kinds of things. And we were going back literally 10 years, streetlight by streetlight, pole by pole, and so there's a history of that as well. But what I really wanted to, the reason I asked to speak here is that, Alex, I appreciate your comments, and from where you're sitting, I can understand your, I'm not sure it's frustration, but your concern. But from where I'm sitting, I think what we ought to do is, to, pardon the expression, is double down, move forward. I've been on the board now 6 years, and if we had done this 6 years ago, we today would not be paying lease for our streetlights. And yes, we would have paid a little bit more, but instead of it being a 3 or 4 year payback under the best of prices, it would have been a 6 or 7 year payback under the worst of prices. And so, the one thing the town has going for it is time and the ability to borrow money, and recognizing that if it takes us 8 years to pay it off, we can structure the price that we pay to pay it off and then start saving money 8 years from now. That is not to say we should ignore the potential that we've been overpaying. I think we ought to pursue that. I think, Stephen, you're right to do that. And as I said, we had multiple ways of doing that. But I think parallel to that, I'd like to see the board literally say, let's get a set of economics that say, worst case scenario is we're not successful. And I got to tell you, George Woodbury is a nationally recognized consultant. He's great at what he does, but he doesn't come inexpensively. And to add, and your number was $15,000, whatever it is, we could say, hey, forget about George. We'll work that $15,000 we'd be paying George into the economics of this thing and see how it works out. Now, I'm not saying forget about George. I think he's good, and I think he'd be beneficial. But part of the economics that we ought to be putting together on this thing is a 10-year economic plan of the cost of streetlights, which includes the cost of leasing the lights, the cost of lighting the lights, owning them versus us not owning them at today's prices and at the price we think it might be. And what we might find is that we can parallel pursue the benefits of starting to buy the lights at the ridiculous price that I agree that is absurd that Wamiko is asking for, while we continue to challenge their price that they're setting. And at some point, we're going to end up being far enough down the road so we can make that happen. I guess what I'm arguing for is to do this in parallel mode and not in a sequential mode. And I understand that we'd like to understand what the cost of the lights are, but I know for a fact that we can send a demand letter to WMECO, and in 30 days, we will get the cost of the lights. We may not like it. It may be way off. It may be challengeable. It may be winnable. But at least we have a number that we can start working the economics on. And in my opinion, even that most ridiculous number can be made to be beneficial. That's how ridiculously expensive it is to lease and to light these lights. They're inefficient when we light them. We pay for the electricity on a schedule that says, oh, it's January 20th, so you pay as if these lights are on from 5 p.m. until 6 a.m., whether they're on or not. So if a light's burned out, we're still paying the electricity. Everybody needs to understand that our street lights are expensive to pay for. They're expensive to lease. And we're all going to be at an MMA meeting this weekend. And this coming weekend, there are going to be 3 or 4 or 5 companies there who are going to tell you how much money they're going to be able to save us. And I truly believe they can. And so my argument is, I get it, Alex, you're right. But instead of saying, we can't fight the utility, we're going to do an end around. Just say, we're going to go, and if we end up having to pay their price, I hate to do that, but because we can challenge that in parallel. And in fact, we can pay their price, we can still appeal it to the DPUC, which is going to be a 2 or 3 year, appeal process, and we get the money back. So, I think this is tremendously beneficial. It's been since the day we looked at it. There's enough communities doing it to say it's of value, and I just think that we ought to have ways of not letting the current delay of WMECO and of the inavailability of George Woodbury.
Well, let me ask you, if we're going to put it on an agenda item for next meeting, what items do you want brought forward?
Well, I'm not sure we're ready for next meeting, but I think in a short period of time, we ought to be able to say, what would the economics look like at the current status, without appealing the prices, without, what are the current economics look
I got
like?
Stephen's attention when I said that.
I'm not going to do this next week.
The economics part of it is the reason why we need to continue to retain George Woodbury, because we have the number. He has spent most of his time trying to figure out how did they get that number and trying to get information from the utility. Let me finish.
Yeah, okay.
The goal of purchasing street lights is clear. I am reporting to you that I am working on it. I am reporting to you that there are circumstances beyond my control that are affecting the achievement of the goal. I am clear on that I need to get to a point soon that we need to present options to the board. So what I'm reporting on is that we have hit some roadblocks. We are trying to find ways to work around them, and so I'm asking for patience while I work through these issues, is all.
And can I just respond? And I'm patient. I'm willing to be patient, but I'm not sure that for us to make a decision needs the numbers that you're waiting for.
I'm telling you, for me to make a decision on a recommendation, I need that information, Mark. I get to do this. I get to run this project. This is an operational thing that I get to do, and I appreciate your guidance on it. I appreciate your guidance on it, but I've been up to my eyeballs in it too, and I understand what we need to get to a point where we can make a recommendation and a decision, and so I am doing what we need to do to get to that point.
And there are no current economics that would allow you to look at what it would be under today's economics?
That is part of the next phase of the work, like options like just buy the fixtures and put them on the lights and let WMECO continue to own the lights, and we just pay a reduced tariff because the LED fixture. There's some question as to whether the tariff is in place yet for Northeast Utilities. Right. It's not. I hear what you're saying. You're not hearing what I mean.
I hear exactly what you're saying.
But you're saying, in spite of that, we should just we should go from A to B. And what I'm saying is, there are reasons why we can't get from A to B right now. And so I'm reporting to you, we are trying to work through those issues. It is a complicated matter, and I want to get to. I need to get more information and more analysis, and I can't do it on my own. I need his expertise. And the bottom line is, I don't, in principle, agree with the notion that we should spend more taxpayer money on top of previously paid taxpayer money and reward the utility. But I do agree with you that it's worth doing, and we should find an option that works best for the town. So we need to spend more time and money on this consultant contract because he has the expertise to help us do that.
Yeah, Stephen, I fundamentally don't understand why you can't look at today's economics. Without any more input from George Woodbury, we know what we pay for renting. We know what we pay.
I'm sorry you don't understand it, Mark, but I can't. I don't have the expertise to do it, and if I did the spreadsheet, I'm not sure I would trust the fact that it had all the factors in there. We retained him because he's the expert. He wrote the original report for the town. He actually is. I think when you talk about the payback on this project, the money we'd be spending to have his expertise is the most efficient use of those resources we could possibly have, and it will pay off huge dividends in the future. So we're on a path we need to keep going, and we're just not where we need to be to make it. We're not at a decision point yet.
Marie?
I think one of the key things that you mentioned is regional and reaching out for a regional solution, because it sounds like WMECO is the gorilla in the room and they're making the decisions. And I think a regional approach, and then reach out to some people in Boston. But one thing I do agree with Mark, and that was I'd like to have a report maybe in a couple, not next meeting, but maybe in a couple of months to see how things are going. Is he able to break through a bit? Because I'm hoping the MMA will find out some information. We'll spend a lot of time talking to other towns, and maybe something will start floating to the surface.
And Marie, what they're going to tell us, because they've told me that in each of the last 3 or 4 years we've gone, is, there's enough savings in the system. You can buy them today. You can buy them you can buy them at, if WMECO came in and reinstalled everything today, so they were as bought today, there's still enough savings for us to replace them ourselves. And we've got some kind of depreciation. I truly do agree that, because we know that in October of 2011, WMECO put some money into the poles and whatever in the system, and so the value did go up at that point. But I believe that there's still value in us doing it today, the way we can bond it, the way we can get benefits for bonding it, and the amazing amount of money that we're spending on lighting these things and renting these things.
Well, when I said a solution, MMA, I'm talking about us all talking to Agawam, West Springfield, start sharing. If you get 4 or 5 towns and you start getting a regional approach, things might start moving faster than we expect. So we'll see what happens.
Let me let the town manager finish his report, because we actually had this as an agenda item. We got spun off.
Oh, okay.
You want to finish your town report? Or your
We can
town
just
manager?
finish it as the agenda item if we want. And then
No,
go back to the
because
report.
I'd like to be able to get this gentleman up and get to his so we can release
Oh
it.
yeah, do we want to pause and do that? Because the next thing is the COA report.
Yeah, if you don't mind, why don't we just kind of stop dead in our tracks since we got carried away, and let's go into it's under the smoking policy presentation, so we can let this gentleman make his presentation and go home. Would you like to come up to the microphone, sir?
Sure.
Could you state your name and, I guess name is all you need for the record on this one. Name and address? Name and address, yeah.
I'm Dr. Bayevsky, Bob Bayevsky, 134 Tanglewood Drive in Long Meadow.
Okay, and let me preface this just a fraction before you start, Doctor. Mr. Santinello and I had chatted 3 or 4 weeks ago on the smoking policy that came out, where Mr. Hirschhorn set up a 20-foot parameter, and in a conversation with Mr. Santinello and I, we were questioning what was the legitimacies of it and how was it brought in, and as a result of that, we requested that we have a person from public health come in and address that that issue.
Sure.
To the board. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for allowing me the opportunity to represent the board. Yes, we did make some recommendations and change the smoking regulation policy that had been in place since, I believe, 1994 was when the last time that had been put in place. And the 2 big changes, as you mentioned, one is the boundaries outside of municipal buildings, as well as still no smoking within buildings and vehicles of the town. And then also we added and discussed the use of e-cigarettes and other electronic smoking devices, and add that to the list of the tobacco products. The 20-foot buffer zone was discussed. We had looked at the need for a buffer zone, and it has been several years. Most towns have added buffer zones. Back in 2005 is when those were put in place, and we were just lax in not doing it here. We did look at the fact that people, although they're told not to smoke in buildings, will then step outside if they're still smokers, and secondhand smoke is an issue that needs to be properly addressed.
And the 20-foot buffer was designed for what?
The 20-foot buffer was designed, was thought as a compromise from what other towns have used. 20-foot buffer zone would prevent wafting of smoke back into buildings and allow egress and entrance to buildings where people would not have to walk directly by smokers who are there. And some towns use as small as 10 feet. Towns have gone out as far as 50 feet. Some towns even prohibit it on municipal properties. This town, when it looked at by legal counsel, felt that that was a little bit extreme to just prohibit it all on municipal properties. So we thought that the 20-foot boundary was a nice compromise to allow avoidance of secondhand smoke.
Questions?
Thank you.
Go ahead, Paul.
You know, when I actually read it in the paper that we had a new policy. My concerns are, you mentioned that it's 20 feet so that if someone's smoking and a door opens, it doesn't go into a building or someone's walking into it. I'll give you an example, because sometimes walking out of these meetings when we were in the old police station, you'd see someone, you'd have a conversation with a board member for an hour and a half after a meeting because they didn't go long enough. But you see people come out of the police department and having a cigarette, for example. 20 feet puts them in the same proximity of, and actually there's been cars that are parked there and sometimes they're running. Did we look at everything else? And because part of this, what I looked at it is there is a trend to eliminate e-cigarettes, for example, and call it a tobacco product, because that, you just said it was added to the list of tobacco products, but it's not a tobacco product. I don't smoke. I don't care. I don't really, care about what people do if they smoke or don't smoke. But when I start to see things like this, it worries me that we created a buffer of 20 feet. The next time, it will be off of town property. And at what point in time does it impact the people that are working here? And is there a potential for some sort of labor negotiation? But also, if you look at, like, the police department's a really good example, because sometimes the cars are left running when they go in and they have to run in for something. Did we look at other things other than tobacco? So there's carbon monoxide from a car, for example, a concern when a door opens. And that's what I'm looking at, is if we're going to do it in terms of name of safety for the people who aren't smoking, because the ones who are at risk, I guess. But so if we're going to do it for the safety of them, did we look at everything? And that's what my concern is that we took an issue that's very popular in terms of banning it and expanded it, but didn't necessarily take a look. And we did it for, I don't know what the medical reasons are. I like to know how many times secondhand smoke went back into the police department or any other building that we have. And is it to push the people as far away as possible?
No,
Or
I think
is
if
it-
that were the case, then it would be the 50-foot or the no municipal property. I think it's just as a reasonable compromise to accommodate non-smokers and the general health and well-being of the citizens of the town who have to transverse through that zone, and to also prevent any kind of backflow. I mean, there is a no smoking in the workplace ordinances in place in this state, and a lot of towns were way behind the ball on what most towns are doing. And no, we did not look at other exhaust type of issues, although on our agenda it may be to look at restaurants or youth tobacco issues as well, as an extension of this on our future agenda items, but nothing that we have planned right now.
And the next question I have is for the town manager. Do we have any reported complaints of people? Have we had a number of complaints of anybody that, hey, someone was smoking, I had to walk through it? I mean, do we hear that at all? I don't see a lot of smoking outside of town buildings as it is, but I just was wondering if that's an issue that we've been facing and that maybe this was developed out of that.
People do smoke outside town buildings. I have observed that, yes.
Yeah, but I'm saying...
Complaints, no, but I don't think this was in response to a complaint. I think this was the policy was in response to a noted public health issue that I guess I don't want to speak for the Board of Health, but it was it was initiated by them, but I support the policy because we do have people who smoke outside the buildings, and if a buffer between smokers and non-smokers helps reduce the exposure to secondhand smoke, which as laid out in the policy is a known public health issue.
It is. It's well
then-
recognized as a public health issue,
That's-
and the safety of e-cigarettes has not yet been fully determined, so we want to be on the cautious side of that.
Okay.
Any other comments? Doctor, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
We reverse back to the agenda item. Stephen, we were halfway through the town manager's report. COA site assessment was your next.
Well, let me hold off on that. If we're going to keep that as an agenda item, I'll just report that on the regional dispatch center study that we're doing, we did retain a consultant team to lead the feasibility study effort. And once they prepare their report, it'll be presented at a future board meeting. And then we did.
Can I ask, what is the feasibility study trying to, looking to do? I mean, what is the goal they're looking to accomplish? Is it, I understand that, they may be looking at cost savings, but is there something else in the feasibility study besides the cost savings that they're going to look at?
Are there operational issues? Are there topographical issues, technology issues, interoperability? I mean, it's pretty technical.
Okay, so it's more than just cost savings type of thing.
The team is led by an architect because part of our scope is some preliminary design work to show what would this facility look like. And so that's why the architecture team is the lead, but the meat of the report is going to be the technology assessment, the government, the structure, like the government structure assessment. Actually, it was.
Excuse me.
These have been set up. Many times they have authority, like government authorities, almost like a regional school district, gets set up to run these regional emergency communication centers. And that is the one I know in Devon's was set up by a home rule petition to the legislature. Right at the end of his term, the governor did sign a bill that allows these to be set up without a home rule petition, which is a big benefit and time saver for this effort. But all of that will be included in this report we're going to get. And again, I just want to reiterate the purpose of doing this is. The state has made this a priority and will no longer fund technology upgrades for individual 911 dispatch centers like we have our own here, which is staffed by our own people. In the future, when we need a communications equipment upgrade, the state likely will not fund it. So that's why through that policy, they're pushing communities to regionalize. So that's the reason why and that's one of the big reasons why the chiefs involved in the towns support the effort to pursue the feasibility study.
Channel 22 tonight is reporting on a regional dispatch, emergency dispatch in Springfield. Can you just let people know how this differs from that?
They did build one. In fact, there was a feasibility study some years ago looking at the feasibility of a Springfield, a regionalized dispatch in Springfield. And that didn't really work. And several of the towns that are part of this effort were a part of that effort. And it didn't work. I mean, truthfully, it was the city of Springfield wants to have a dispatch center and then rent that service to other communities. Largely due to the personality of the communities and the call volume and other unique factors, how a 911 call handled in our Longmeadow dispatch now versus a Springfield dispatch is somewhat different. And the 5 towns that are participating in this effort that we're in are much more similar in how they respond to calls and their level of community policing than you would get in an urbanized area like Springfield. So the key difference is it's just I don't want to say a different level of service, but just a different type of service that smaller towns provide than urbanized areas. So the one last thing is we did go visit one of the newer DPW facilities in the state in Westford, which came online about 2006. And I included some photos there just to show it's a much larger facility than we would ever have, but I just wanted to include that for information to show that we're starting to set some targets in terms of what we'd be looking for in a facility here, and the benefits they get from having a modern facility.
Yeah, Westford apparently had an angel fell out of heaven on them. Because they've got a complex that's just unbelievably large. I mean, it was larger than they needed to start with, and then I think he almost doubled the size of everything in it for future expansion. That's why their workforce is 19, was it?
No, more than that. It's a much larger department than we have.
I thought they said they only had 19 in there. Because all of their other functions are still out.
Right.
They're not.
Their water and sewer workers
not
are
there.
a separate.
Yeah.
Are a separate agency up there, but the facility was built to incorporate them at a later date.
Yeah, but they're not there.
Yeah, but they're not there now.
They're not there, and they haven't been there
And
since
Parks and Rec
2006.
too.
Parks and Rec is off the side. All of the departments still do their own maintenance. The schools still do their own maintenance. So when you look at those pictures, I mean, it's an unbelievable facility.
Yeah, I don't.
How much did it cost?
$10 million.
Yeah, 10
And
million.
it's unbelievable that he was able to. It was just perfect timing. And apparently, he did go to the board, and he asked for 10, and they said it's not enough, and they gave him 11, and he gave him $1 million back after
kidding, yeah.
construction.
Well, the picture of the lift that's in there.
It's beautiful.
It's an indoor lift. It's floor mounted. It's not hydraulic, and can lift the fire department's ladder truck. That blew me away. That lift in there, because it doesn't look like much when you're standing
No.
next to it. But it just
But
and
it's
the
about
salt.
45 foot long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's amazing how modern their facilities are and the things that enables them to do. So like I said, it's certainly. That is a bar that we'd love to hit. I doubt we'll get there because I think it is more than even they need. But certainly there are elements that I think that we could easily incorporate into a new facility here.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Marie.
Did you show pictures of ours when they were showing pictures of theirs?
No,
We could fit most of ours into their salt shed.
correct.
Their salt shed is one of the largest salt sheds I've ever seen. I mean, it's just, you just can't. It's at least four times the size of our salt shed.
And did it use telephone poles to hold it up?
Easily four, it may even be 6 times.
Yeah, I have a hard time. I mean, you can visualize ours being stacked up like blocks many times in this
Right.
facility. Yeah.
And
And the other thing is, we made the comment about how good their equipment looked.
Yeah.
And even in their old facility, but especially now, their equipment is stored inside, garaged in a moderately heated space, and it's amazing the difference it makes.
Yeah, they had a 1991 truck that looked unbelievable.
Yeah.
1991, a dump truck. But their snowplow operation is a little different, narrow roads. They've got the kick plows on the side, so it's a very, very, very elevated level of service. I even Googled it and looked at the map and went down and looked at it, and it looks immense even from that, because the pictures you see don't show the entire complex. The ones that Yem took, it only shows kind of the auto shop and that sort of thing. Anyway, some facility, I'm not I walked away with definite maintenance complex envy. It is that beautiful. And what was even more pressing, in case anybody here is listening, the facility was put in 2006, and it looks like it was just opened. It is being flawlessly maintained by the staff. It's just immaculate. So, okay, next item, Steve.
Well, and then the only other thing would be the COA site assessment briefing, which is an agenda item. Do we want to have continued dialogue about the streetlights, or are we done with that?
Well,
for now?
we'll get it. We'll see. I guess we can go streetlights. Is there any further wind left?
Well, no, I had some questions about the town reports. Do we do that now, or?
Sure.
The town manager's report?
Yeah, well,
Absolutely.
also all the town departments. I just had, first of all, on the building report, first of all, the reports were great. There was so much information, but I think it's fabulous. They're looking for online permitting. I was very excited about that. And the tennis court, the bids, there was just sort of like a highlight on mine, like the last 2 bids. Are we still waiting for those? Is that why it was sort of like question marks next to it?
No, we have that in. I didn't see that. No, the tennis court bids came back. I think I had emailed the board on it with the bid tab. The bids came in The all-inclusive bid from the Vermont company was, I think, $792,000 or something, just under $800,000. As you recall, that price that we'd had from the previous bidding was about $890,000. So we saved just under $100,000 by rebidding it.
Oh, great. And then I wanted to ask you, well, first of all, they opened up the new swap building.
Yes.
And you have a handicap accessible. It'd be great to have a press release or maybe photos out on that so people really know that's available now. On the 1280 William Street, that new development is going to be taxable. I didn't quite understand. Is that what it said?
The old synagogue property?
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything about it.
Oh, okay, because the finance was talking about looking at what the taxes would be, and I just didn't know if that meant that there would be, or they were just looking to see if there could be.
I think they're looking to see. I have not seen a proposal, and if the building department has, I haven't seen it.
I imagine until it's built, you can really know what the tax rate's going to be. But
You can do an estimate based on square footage, but until you go
it's
through
going to
and
be taxable.
Yeah.
It will be taxable. Yeah, that was what I was wondering.
That's what I'd heard, but I haven't. Until I see a
That's what I've
proposal and a site plan in writing, I don't know.
And the DPW had several reports in there, but I just, again, was struck on, first of all, how much is being done in town, but a lot of it is drainage issues. And so, again, I was hoping this board would consider a stormwater enterprise fund. I think a lot of our costs are going in there. And then the other thing was the police department had that report on the robberies that were occurring, and I think they did a fabulous job in tracking them down. But, you know, I did ask them, I said, did you have to use a police dog? And they said, well, we borrowed one twice. And so maybe we should find out if a police dog is really going to be helpful with these burglaries that we did have a spike, and also with the car break-ins. And maybe the board should reconsider the police dog if the chief feels this is important. I was just reading through that, and that was one of my thoughts. And then the last thing was on the water bills. So our water is really going up, our costs. Is that what it was saying? That there's a possibility of a shortfall?
Revenues are down based on
Usage.
consumption. Right. And it's a projection. And even at the time we did the rates, actually, I don't know if we went back and readjusted it, but the information we got from Springfield wasn't necessarily accurate. And now we're getting projections that are lower than they'd given us those 5-year projections when we set the rates. And now that we're getting different information from that. So I think as we've talked about at the subcommittee level, it's a moving target right now. But if people aren't using as much water, then our consumption goes down, and therefore our revenue goes down. And that's, in some ways, a very positive thing. But when you budget the cost to operate the department based on a projection of revenues, it can create a shortfall, yes.
Okay, so it's consumption is what we're really looking at there. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Marie, the numbers show that the current consumption for the fiscal year 2015, given the fact that we did the summer months of July, August, September, are tracking the same as fiscal year 2012, which is substantially, and it's substantially lower than 13 and 14 last couple of years. So the actual consumption is down, which means we're probably going to have a shortfall in our
Yeah, substantial.
projected revenue.
Could you take a minute, Stephen, and talk about the YourGov app that we have out there? Are you getting much response out of that from the public?
We've had it online and been kind of testing it a little bit. We haven't rolled it out. I think, as I mentioned in a previous meeting, we've had some staff turnover on the front line at the DPW, who would be the people responsible for receiving these work orders and making sure they get processed and done appropriately, and we want to get them up to speed before we roll out. We don't want to roll out the app and then have us not have the ability to effectively process the requests. But we're getting very close, and we're going to be meeting later this week or early next week to develop a timeline for doing some press coverage to roll it out. It is a fantastic app. I just, like I said, I didn't want to shoot ourselves in the foot, quite honestly.
Okay. I did notice when I looked at the map, all the work orders have been reported. Now, when they're cleared, are those circles going to disappear, do you know?
They should, yeah.
Okay.
And that's one of those things where how it works in Cartograph, which is our work management system, and the link between YourGov. There's parts of it that speak in different languages or have different terms, and that's one of the things we're trying to sort out the protocols for.
Okay. And just let everybody know, basically what it's going to be is you can use your cell phone or your tablet, take a picture of a deficiency and punch a couple of buttons, and it's automatically sent to DPW and put into the work order system. And there will be communication back and forth, so you'll be interactive with work being scheduled in the community. Marie, first you had her
Actually,
hand.
all I was going to do is ask you to explain it in
Yeah, that's
layman's
just
terms.
an encapsulation, because we'll wait till it really hits the.
Yeah, it's a citizen, not a complaint form, but we've talked in the past about having, anyone in town with a smartphone can be an inspector for the DPW. And like I said, the big thing was making sure we could deal with it and knew how to process them internally, because you open a work order, and if you don't close it, it skews the data on how we function, and we want to use that data to improve our operational performance. So that's one of the things, like I said, we're straightening out. A lot of it was just basically due to staff turnover.
And when we go live, Marie, we'll actually put it on the screen behind
Yeah.
us and go right
that'd be
through the whole
great.
process, so everybody can see it at home and see what it looks like.
Richard?
Yes, sir.
Stephen, so you were saying we don't want to have this information coming in unless there's somebody there to process the work orders?
Right, we wanted to make sure that we knew that the people who are on the front lines of getting this information know how to process it and deal with it. And it's not that we don't want to do the work. I mean, obviously,
No, I understand you want
if someone picked up the
what's
phone
wrong
and called.
with having the information, even if you can't process it? Even if you're in a process of getting somebody to handle the information?
Having the information, someone emailing it or calling it is fine. It's when it ties to the work management system. The system, in addition to helping us manage the work, it is our data collection system for timing how long it takes to deal with a complaint about a tree branch or something else. And if we had requests coming in and our staff who are dealing with these things on the front lines didn't know how to deal with it or had different interpretations of how you close out a project, or it skews our data, and we don't have a long history of data on this, so we're trying to make sure we keep our data sample as clean as possible.
No, I get that. I mean, but it kind of sounds like we don't want the information coming in, or else it will make our numbers look bad.
No, just not through your Gov. Just not through the app.
You're doing beta testing right now.
We have, and we've done some, and like I said, they're getting better at it. Like I said, the two people who were on the front lines with this before have been replaced by two new people in the last couple of months. And so in addition to learning their regular jobs, it's learning this. No, like I said, it's only information submitted through your Gov. If people call with the information or email, we can still address it. We'll still do the work. It just is, if it comes in through the app, it really affects our data, and the data is really important to, like I said, analyze our performance. It really is more of a
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of sounds like we don't want the information, or else it will seem like there are a bunch of jobs that we're not getting to, which in fact we're not getting to because we don't have somebody in place to process them.
Only through government, only through your Gov app.
If you call 567-3400 report something, it gets taken care of. It's only required.
No, I get that,
which is why we haven't marketed the app.
But the whole idea behind the app is to increase the quantity of these things, so to make it easier. So by not having the app in place or this mechanism in place, we're sort of depressing the number of complaints that we're getting in because we're making it harder to make it happen.
I can understand why that is a perspective on this, but we're not trying to hide from the work. We just want to make sure we know how to process the work that comes in through the app. It's a new piece of software for us, and we've talked about DPW operations a lot. And if we want to track how we are improving operations, it's things like our Longstadt project through the Collins Center that helps us do that, because we don't have outside help to do it independently. So if our data set gets skewed because of change in personnel or growing pains with this new system, then it takes a long time to get to work those anomalies out of the data set. So that's, I hear what you're saying, Alex. It's not about the
No,
work.
it's just when I hear skewing the data, I mean,
it's not about the work.
It sounds like it's a
about creating
sort of
an
a
accurate
reporting
data set.
issue. For
It's a
you.
what?
A reporting issue.
You want to keep this one? You, Marie?
Yeah, it's actually this. I think Richard explained it best to me. He says you got to make sure you don't get garbage in or you get garbage out. And the point of the statistics is you have to measure this correctly so you do improve and you figure out where to make your improvements. So it's not that we're not taking the reports in, but we got to do it correctly within the system or else the system's worthless.
Well, you're beta testing it right now. Because I looked at it last night. There's likely 15, 20, maybe 30 reported incidents in the community in there right now. So, any anticipation of when it's going to go live?
Very soon. Like I said, we need to. We're going to get together either this week or early next. We've got some illness. I don't know if anybody else, but people have been dropping like flies with being sick and out a few days. So we're going to get together internally, make sure that everybody's ready to go, and then we have a press release drafted, have had it drafted for months to advertise it. Some people are using the system. It just is we want to make sure we do it right.
I'd anticipate by next meeting, then we may be able to get an update.
Yeah,
okay,
definitely.
Good. Okay, Alex? Yeah, it's coming. Mark?
I just have another question, Stephen. You reported that there's been a decision to switch our website to Civics Plus. And,
yes.
And I guess my question is, how are we paying for that since it wasn't a line item that I knew of or within a line item on the budget? And
the IT department had a line item in their budget, and we carried it over for this.
Okay,
and we carried it over.
And I guess this is full circle back to the IT committee. There was supposed to be some input by an IT committee on some of this stuff, I thought, but
I don't. My sense of the IT committee wasn't that it was supposed to be that involved in day-to-day stuff like this.
No, but in terms of reviewing, potential
I thought capital
systems of. Well, I thought it was potential software, and then website is Civics Plus is a content provider.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's not a capital expenditure.
No, but it's a commitment to an ongoing expense year after year.
So do we not want to do something with the website? I thought that was also.
No, I just think the question is, since we debated for no time at all over WordPress, and then there was a whole discussion over whose content delivery system you use. There was a discussion that we would bring together people in the community who seem to know or would have an opinion on that to be advisors to the IT department.
Civics Plus is sponsoring almost every community around here.
We did look at several options.
They're the webmaster on all of these.
The IT department did look at several options, and we went through and kind of evaluated them, and Civics Plus came out as the most favorable option. And I thought I was going to have a timeline we had our kickoff meeting with Civics Plus today, and our targeted kind of go live date is July 6th. So we're supposed to be receiving a timeline from them that will back out of that date.
They are likely, I don't know for a fact, I would imagine they're one of the largest site providers for municipalities in the country.
They do a lot of them, yeah. They are
unbelievably large. Go ahead, Marie.
We have some departments that are contracting out, like I think Parks and Rec and stores and
certain
police.
Aspects of it, yeah.
Certain. Is there a possibility that in a year or so they'll be able to roll into Civics Plus and save some money?
That's part of the scope of work.
Great, thank you.
And the other thing is, we have several what they call modules. We use Blackboard Connect as our outreach program. Civics Plus has a module that's similar to that. We have ActiveNet that allows people to use credit cards to enroll in Parks and Rec programs. Civics Plus has a module for that. So it's really looking at not only just the website, but also what does it do for interactive things, like what services can you get from the website, how do the modules from Civic line up with that, and then what aren't we doing that they can allow us to do going forward. So like I said, we just started today, so we'll be reporting on that on an ongoing basis.
That's one of the longest town manager reports I think you've ever given.
That's two agenda.
Yeah, in the Civics Plus, I think there's two things first of all, to Mark's point, that's exactly what the IT committee was supposed to do, is check and balance to the recommendations of the IT department. Because what the IT department chose, I don't know why they chose them, and I don't really care, because this isn't the issue. The other issue with the website, quite frankly, isn't the host, whether it's Civics Plus or WordPress. The issue with the website is who's going to work on it. I mean, was there a discussion of the, what do you call it, webmaster? Because that's what the issue has been. It hasn't been. It's been timeliness of information that's 3 months old, that still is in rotation and that type of thing. Where Civics Plus really wasn't to me, that wasn't you could have used the current website. It's the issue of the data, who's getting it in and who's responsible and that type of thing. Is any part of that, that has nothing to do with Civics Plus coming in, right?
Civics Plus can be the webmaster. And they can, if we give them content in a Word document, I mean, let me see, they can do everything.
Correct.
And there's certain things we get as part of the base fee, and there's certain things we can contract for additionally. But webmaster, we had specifically had that discussion with them, and we're not there yet, but it's going forward, evaluating, do we need to hire somebody on our end? Is it more efficient to hire somebody on our end to be a webmaster, or to add it to their contract and then just have people be able to send? Because the content still comes from our employees.
Understand that, yeah.
But the formatting of it and how it gets put on the website and how we make sure it stays current, those are functions Civics Plus can and will likely do. But we still need to generate content internally. Did I answer that?
Sort of.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah, Stephen, I think one of the issues for me is always, can you use your website for doing communications to the town? Nowadays you probably more likely use Facebook or Twitter, but for updates that Civics Plus may not be doing 24/7, but if there was an incident in town and you wanted to communicate to people in all possible ways, we know that several of us could get into the website tonight and update something in 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And the question is, in the future, will we have the ability to do that? Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I'd like to make sure that we consider, and I'm sure you are as you look through that. And I think that's one of the things that we were talking about. Who's the webmaster?
Like Richard said, it works for many communities. I'm sure we'll make it work for us. I don't think we're that unique where they can't work for us too.
We all through the town manager's report.
No, he's debt policy.
Oh.
He's going to get us copies.
All through the town manager's
Do
report?
you have one?
Yes, now COA site assessment. I don't have it. I could actually look. I couldn't find one.
Well, that's what he's going to go and get it, make paper copies for us, so we have it, just so you.
So now, I mean, if the streetlight agenda item is sufficiently covered, Mr.
Can I ask,
Chairman,
there was one question I had on the streetlights, but it was.
Go ahead, Paul. Yeah, it's on the agenda.
What it seems to me is that there's an A and a B. A is the overcharging of the current lights and the fees associated with that from WMECO. And then the B is the new depreciation schedule, which there's a potential for the overcharging, I should say. And then there's the new cost or a different cost than what was originally. Because George was here in 2007 with our Renewable Energy Task Force with here's what the numbers are, here's what you do. So to the point of A is potential, well, A is the new cost of the redefined cost of the poles to purchase the streetlights from WMECO because of the new depreciation schedule, which pushes the payback a little bit further along the line. And the second thing is the potential overcharging to the town of Long Meadow for the current usage and past usage. Are those two things linked? Meaning, can't we, if for example, we say, look, it makes sense to go ahead with a streetlight project or with the streetlight project and purchase the poles, we can still go back after WMECO, can't we? I mean, there's a...
those are exactly the options that we just need a little more information to be able to figure out. If we do that, what's the consequence of it? Because, I mean, right now, everything is out there. All options are out there. We need to get more because what ended up happening is the phase one, or the original part of our agreement with George Woodbury was to go through and do an analysis of the net book value and help us kind of do the economics and the payback. And it only takes him 2 seconds to do it. It would take me all day if I could even do it. And as we delved into it, and we got, and the other thing I'll say is 3 months went by before we got the information that we had requested from WMECO. So it wasn't us not doing anything on it. It was we weren't getting the info that we can't do anything without the information. We just weren't getting it from the utility company. Once we got it, and he started saying, oh, that doesn't seem right, and kind of saying, well, why is it so different? And they said, well, here's this thing we did with our depreciation rate. That it was a proverbial peel the onion moment where he spent a lot of time and energy drilling down into it and reading DPU decisions and going back and trying to back out of what their methodology was. And so we used up our fee in that process, which...
How much was that?
That was $7,500. So rather than get the work product we thought we were going to get, we got into the tip of the iceberg and said, this is a big deal. And so that's where we need to move forward. And like I said, I don't want to chase this down endlessly, but I don't think we're at a point where we can just say we're just going to stop looking. And this next phase does need to include, I agree, a part of, can we cleave the issue, go ahead and pay their price subject to some possible revision of it down the line as we fight this battle, and then decide if it's worth our while to spend the $50,000 or whatever on lawyers and consultants to go to the DPU in 2 or 3 years. We don't have like I said, we don't have the information in place to really make an educated decision on what the right approach is. I'm pretty sure, but again, since we don't know where the information is going to lead us, I can't guarantee that we're going to have that after the next phase is another $7,500. I'm requesting $15,000 because I'm going to guess that from the state, because I'm going to guess this is going to take us even further. But right now, our next agreement with George would be on the $7,500, which I think is reasonable to get to these decision points. And like I said, once we get there, we'll report on it and see what is the next step for us.
Okay. I guess the part that you kind of lost me on was the idea of building a coalition to pressure the electric company. I mean, if Woodbury is a step to that, I mean, it seems like, the chances of success are pretty low. Electric companies tend not to, care too much what their customers think. They're protected. To me, any strategy that sort of is premised on that really requires rethinking. And we've got money. We've got projects, I'm sure, that could use it right now, shovel-ready projects. And I just don't understand a strategy it feels like a Hail Mary pass.
I agree with you, but insofar as, if there's, instead of being part of a class, instead of an individual person suing someone, if there's any kind of benefit to being a part of a group. And our strategy isn't, our strategy for either implementing this or not implementing is not based on this coalition. It is, Mark talked about doing things simultaneously. It is a simultaneous part of this broader effort. Like I said, we don't know where this is going to lead us, so we're looking at all of the options that we have in front of us now. And you may be right, the coalition just may be tilting at windmills, but let's at least, his recommendation, let's look into this, because you may not need to take it all the way to the DPU to get them to yield if enough of their customers, large-scale customers, municipalities, raise enough of a stink. That's the theory. Like I said, we don't know enough to know that we should back off of that, and hopefully we find that out soon.
Steve, the purpose of my concern is timing, I guess, more than anything else. We all recognize we're in an era that is historically low interest rates, and I have no clue how much longer it's going to last. But the opportunity to borrow the money we're going to need, and don't make any mistake about it, we're going to have to borrow money to buy the streetlights or to do some upgrades. The key is
possible override money. I don't know if we'll have enough debt capacity, depending. Because that's the problem, Mark. We don't have unlimited ability to borrow under our levy cap.
Right, with the caveat that says the first $400 and some odd $1,000 of that debt service is money we're currently paying in the line item for leasing and lighting our streetlights. And so the overall economics is you save money on lease and you save money on lighting. You're going to pay money on debt because you're going to pay to put money. You're going to pay money on a maintenance charge, and obviously you're going to still pay money to light the new streetlights that you own. And the question is, what's the balance? And to me, if interest rates go up a whole lot, it may not be a slam dunk. We don't have to be like a Fortune 50 corporation that gets a 20% return on our money. We've got to just break even or better to make it viable for us to promote to our residents. And I think that last time we looked at it, it was a 6 or 7 year payback. It might now be an 8 or 9 or 10 year payback. But I think if interest rates go up, that could go against us, and I'd hate to see us lose it because of the price of money. And so that's one of the reasons that I think this issue of uncoupling the two and seeing what we can do. I mean, and I understand the potential complexity of this thing, but from a macro perspective, it really is, lease costs and lighting costs today versus financing costs, maintenance costs, and lighting costs tomorrow. And you don't know what the financing costs are until you know the capital to buy it and the capital to install. But that's why I wasn't following you saying we don't have the information we need to make that level decision, because we may find that there's no way we can do this, and if we know that, let's cut our losses and move on. And I think we ought to get that. The worst thing we can do is wait 6 months and get all this work done. Work it out to the third decimal place to find out that it wasn't viable at a plus or minus 15% estimate that we could have had sooner. And I think that's my concern. If we're going to kill it, we ought to kill it sooner rather than spending money on it before we kill it. Obviously, I hope it doesn't die, but I think that's part of my reason for pursuing
No
this.
one's talking about killing it.
No, but just like when we looked at the solar field, I was gung-ho for that, but I was the first one to stand here and say the economics don't work when the economics didn't work. And if the economics of buying our streetlights, let's put it to bed and move on to something else and take our green energy money elsewhere.
I understand.
Okay, I think your point's well taken. I think all the points are well taken, but I think you've got enough feelings from the board, or would you like some more?
I'm good.
Okay. I appreciate everybody's comments, though, because everybody's on it. I think everybody's frustrated we can't do it now. I think that's it.
Probably me more than anybody else.
And you notice I purposely have not said a thing, and I'm full of frustration, but I'll take it out on the ice on my sidewalks. Okay, let's see. Stephen, let's jump back up. Let's get approval. Can somebody give me a motion for the approval of December 15th?
I move we approve the December 15th, 2014 regular meeting minutes as distributed.
Second? Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Aye.
I move we approve the January 5th, 2015 regular meeting minutes as distributed.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, COA report. Stephen, have you already given us enough on that one?
I haven't done anything on it yet. I held off because it was an agenda item, so I didn't give my town manager's report on that.
I thought you did.
No.
Okay, well, then why don't you give us the COA? Excuse me, you're right, you didn't. I didn't have any comments by that.
Well, I did distribute the report to the board, and we did distribute it to the task force that had really been the citizens task force that had driven the effort to get the citizens petition to fund the appropriation that yielded the study. The folks involved in this effort, like I said, in addition to getting the citizens petition article for the $35,000 appropriation, also were the ones who selected Pioneer Valley Planning Corporation, or wanted us to hire Pioneer Valley Planning Corporation or Commission to perform the site analysis. They developed the scope of work. that they wanted PVPC to follow. And I picked it up at that point, but did so in a way that I felt kept those same people who were driving this issue involved in the project and let them, really guide the effort with their commitment and knowledge of, they've done like I said, the private citizens that have driven this really have done an exceptional amount of research on other senior centers and sites in our own town where it could go, and so I didn't want to, not take advantage of all of that knowledge that they had developed. So we, as a group, pursued this further. We got the report back, and it made some recommendations. It had, options ranging from do nothing to build new someplace else. It did come out and say that a renovated Greenwood Center was probably the best option, but not by much. And so when the task force was discussing the findings of the report, there was some, the people that started this got started because they wanted a new senior center like so many other communities are building around us. And so there was discussion about whether or not they were satisfied with the recommendation of a renovated Greenwood versus building new at Turner Park, which was the site that was determined to be the second best option by PVPC. And the scoring is in the report, and I have to say, it really, yes, there's some subjectivity in it, but they had a 5-point scoring system, and they just Pioneer Valley did the weighting of the factors themselves, they did the scoring themselves, and they made the recommendations independently. And so there was some debate at the task force level, and so at the seeing that there wasn't a clear consensus on the findings, I recommended to the members of the Council on Aging board that they take up this issue, and that the COA then become kind of the entity that shepherds this effort going forward, which they agreed to do. So now the COA board is reviewing the findings. I think their recommendation is to pursue a new facility at Turner Park, and they're in the process of establishing subcommittees to that end, including people to look at the feasibility of it, have solicit some community input, and kind of go through the process that you would go through to pursue a development like this. So, like I said, I think Pioneer Valley did a good job on the report. We got what we, not in terms of the findings, but in terms of the level of analysis, we got what we thought we would get. There are a couple of items that we were contracted to do. One is a public forum that has not happened yet, largely because we want, my recommendation to the COA is that you should have a public forum to talk about, your belief in the report and how you feel about it. And like I said, there's not clear consensus on that yet. And I would also, and then there was some schematics, like basically a elevation, like a picture of what a new building would look like. Given that their recommendation was a renovated Greenwood, Pioneer Valley felt it wasn't the best expenditure of $3,000 to $5,000 that they had carried in their contract for that recommendation. So we're going to go kind of back to the drawing board a little bit, metaphorically, not literally, to see if we want to pursue those last elements or stop this phase of the process and start new. And the overall project, Pioneer Valley's fees so far is about $10,000, which leaves about $25,000 left in the original appropriation. Do we believe that we fulfilled the goal of the article? To some extent, that is, some feel yes, we have, some feel no, we haven't. We may need an interpretation or an opinion from council. But I would recommend that since town meeting gave them $35,000, they should at the very least go back to town meeting and amend the original article to use the appropriation to take this project to the next phase and identify what specifically they want to get out of that. So those are the issues that the COA is grappling with as we speak.
I'm very confused. The money for the study was by citizens petition, not by the Council on Aging, not by the Select Board, by citizens petition. Once it was funded or passed at town meeting, it became a town project. Not a Council on Aging project, but a town project. And I know this was handed off to the COA board that was handling the study, so to speak, and putting together some of the information for Pioneer Valley Plan. And what I don't understand is why this would be given back to the Council on Aging to further along or go back to town meeting and ask for more money. At this point in time, I would imagine that the discussion about, because the report came back and said, here's our recommendation, based on everything that we had, the parameters, the surveys, everything else. At this point in time, I would hope that it's a town report, it's not a Council on Aging report, and that it would be up to this board to decide what the next steps would be based on this report, not the Council on Aging. The Council on Aging has no power to expend funds, for example, other than what they might have that was been bequeathed to them. So I don't understand what the process is in terms of asking the Council on Aging to review that. I understand that they want new and they want to look at the study. That's fine, they can do that. But in terms of what the next steps were, I believe lies with this board, not with the Council on Aging.
I disagree. And in the context of the project, the Council on Aging is a part of the town. They are a board appointed by the Select Board to be the advisory body for the Adult Center, which is a department of the town. And similar to the way the Parks and Rec, the Parks Board is advisory to the town department, the Parks and Rec department. So, insofar as input of stakeholders is an important part of this process, the Council on Aging really has the strongest connection of the town departments to the input of the people who are most interested and knowledgeable about this project. So, and truthfully, it's an advisory body, and so they're going to advise on what they think the next step should be. You're correct. They can get 35 signatures and put together a citizen's petition to amend the article. Anyone can do that, but they cannot spend money on their own. But they can advise the town department, the Council on Aging department, the Adult Center, on what they think they should do with their budget, but they can't spend on their own. So if I indicated they would be taking unilateral action on this, I apologize. What I tried to say was that they were going to decide for themselves what they think the next course of action should be and make a recommendation back to the town.
Okay, but you disagreed with what I said in the sense that the next step should be decided by this board. There was a study done on behalf of the town that said, here's what we're going to do, an assessment based on our Council on Aging Center, and it came back with a recommendation. Just like we did a DPW fleet study. We had a recommendation come back, and we either are going to adhere to what the study said or we're not. So the discussion, I think, of the level of this board is, at this point in time, is what do we want to do with this study? And where do we go with it? I think Council on Aging can have all the input in the world. That's what they should do. But the study is done. So the input part they had when the study was being conducted.
COA didn't do the study, and I think that's
No, Pioneer
important.
Valley Planning did, but it was primarily to the 2,000 people survey was done to the 2,000 people that received the voice, which are basically the users of the Council on Aging.
I think, and I wanted to distinguish on. I appreciate you raising that point, and I guess I disagree with the notion that the COA is not a part of the town. The COA
I didn't say that.
is a part of the town.
I never said that, right.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood. So the COA members of the COA board were heavily involved in this process, but it was an independent group of people that got together. They may have started their effort, their journey on this as a part of a COA task force, kind of went out on their own with a citizen's petition, and then when we kind of got back together at the end, we decided who's going to carry the ball on this, and basically who's going to decide what the recommended approach is going to be, because there's some disagreement about what the findings in the report. And I said that the Council on Aging, because they are an organized entity with bylaws and are a part of the town, seemed like a logical group to, like I said, pick up the ball and move this forward and make recommendations. They agreed to do that. But you're right in that ultimately, but for a citizen's petition, this board will make decisions on borrowing and and there's probably a lot of decisions that I can't even project, other than like borrowing and possibly through the budget process, maybe not having an appropriation and to retain an architect or something like that, the board can certainly weigh in and make recommendations or make decisions on what happens next. But the COA, like I said, is well suited to move this forward. I mean, truthfully, if the report didn't give us a clear home run next step that everybody wanted to jump on it, like I said, the Greenwood renovation was the preferred alternative, but like I said, not by much, like 1 point or something like that. I mean, only a couple of points on the scoring separated it from Turner Park. And so I think there was reasonable debate about what the better option was. And I think, I would hope that the COA would, spend some time drilling down into that decision, and they did. They want to pursue Turner Park. They're going to have to come up with a plan as to how they want to do that, and I think they'll present that plan to this board at some point in time when they're ready.
Okay, I just want to make a point. There's a process. Process was town meeting funded it, becomes a town project, study's been done. I really believe that this board should have a discussion point at some future agenda that says, this is what came back to us as a town, what do we want to do with it? And nothing, something, or something different. And
you can do that now. I mean,
no, I'm not asking to do that now because this was a report that was being given to us, and I'm saying that this shouldn't be something that lays on the table and says, well, just COA will come back with a recommendation. They can still come back with a recommendation, but is it the will of the board to pursue a new council on aging building? And if it is, or renovation, whatever you want to talk about it, and if it is, then great. Then get together and figure out what it's going to be. Is it going to be at Greenwood? Is it going to be at Turner? But to have a debate within the Council on Aging and then come before the board, I think we need to have that discussion as well as we had the study presented to us. This is the first time we're discussing it. And we haven't really talked about what the value is in each of those, different sites that were there, because there was one that was kind of taken out of consideration as well. And so my only point is that I understand what you said was, Council on Aging wants to look at it. I don't. That's no problem. They can do that. They're advocates. But it is also incumbent upon this board to do the same thing, I think.
If I just can respond to that, I agree with you on that one, and I think it is an agenda item, and I didn't really come in here thinking this way, but you're right. If the board feels like it knows enough about the report to do essentially the same exercise that the COA did, which is they took a vote as to which option they wanted to pursue, if this board wants to take a vote about what option they think the town should pursue, that's
Not for
good.
tonight's agenda, though. We can put it on a future agenda, because this was just a briefing by you on this report. That's the
Like I
only
said, I'll
purpose.
defer to you on that.
Yeah.
Some future point.
Right.
Yeah,
No, we can put it, I mean, if the will of the board is, what's being done now is not hurting anything either.
I disagree with that, but.
Well, let me finish, and you can disagree. Because the board, their board is active. They're actively pursuing. They're actively meeting. They're actively discussing the issues. They're fully aware that they're not going to authorize the building of this structure, but they're still mulling through the information and trying to get the senior input. It's no different than what we would have in this room right now if we had an open forum by having that board sit here and talk. So what they're doing, they're talking amongst themselves at this point and trying to coalesce their ideas. And they will come and meet with us. They have to. They know they have to. We showed no interest in this project, folks. This board showed absolutely zero interest in this project until this moment. So we had to call a spade a spade. If we were interested back when it was originally a warrant article, we would have had a subcommittee formed and been with this force all along. So they're doing what they need to be doing to get ready to come to us. They're not doing anything behind our back. Everything's in the open. The meetings are posted. And they're basically working up to the point of briefing this board. Now, change direction now, that's fine. But the fact is they've done nothing wrong so far.
I don't think I've accused them of doing that.
No, I know you didn't, Paul. I know you
kind of.
No, I know, but I mean, they have done nothing wrong. We've shown no interest in the project up until now.
You make a good point. Sorry, Marie. You make a good point, Richard. And I think that, and I didn't really explain this very well, and I apologize for that. I think the reason why the COA, I encourage the COA to take up the ball on this is because I don't have a mandate from the board to push this issue, and we have the study, and the way sometimes these things happen, you get the study, it lands with a thud, and then that's it. You just have the study and nothing further. And I felt like the people that were behind getting the appropriation had put enough time and energy into this where they should, I would at least recommend them a way that they could continue this effort and not have it just kind of end with the delivery of the study. And I just recommended that the COA do that for them.
Yeah,
And so
they're
that's-
under no pretense to bypass this board.
No.
They fully realize, because I've been at every meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I've volunteered to be at every meeting, and I've listened to them. I strictly listened. I have not commented. I've not been part of the discussion, but it just flow in the conversation just to see how the group was moving along. And I think you've been at every meeting, too. And Marie, you're a representative there on there. So it is getting close to the point, and then at the point, we'll bring it forward to the board. And it'll be an active discussion. Now, he had his hand up first, Marie.
Yeah, I guess
He wanted to disagree with me.
Well, my concern is the role of a town organization relative to a study that was funded by the town, and if at what point do you go back and say, we don't agree, and so we're now going to take another path? I mean, there was a accusation at the time of our special town meeting in the fall that this was all just the cover to move toward a new adult center. And in fact, we said, no, whatever the study comes back, we're going to listen to the study. Well, the study came back and they don't want it. And I won't say everybody, but clearly a preponderance or some people don't want to listen to the study. Yeah, it was close. They always are close. And that's why you have an independent group like the PVPC take a look at it. And I think the Council on Aging owes us, who they are here as representatives of the Select Board. They are appointed by the Select Board. They certainly owe us some explanation. You said, yeah, they plan to come here. I think the date ought to be sooner rather than later. And I say that because, for me, I'd like to know why, the COA entrusted with money that was appropriated from a citizen's petition at town meeting, asked by the town manager to, quote unquote, take the lead as advocates for the senior center to have that study done, now come back and say, we don't like the study and we're going to lead the charge in a whole other different direction. As individuals and as private citizens, they can lead the charge any way they want to. But as the COA, do they not have an obligation to follow what came through back to the town and say, if we don't like it, then what were they doing in terms of getting that, moving that in a different direction? I mean, we had a lot of work done by the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. We had a survey go out to thousands of people with 0.7% return or something very, very low.
3%.
3% return, I'm sorry, okay, 3% return, something very, very low. And now we're hearing, and we don't like the results. I mean,
They're not saying they don't like the results, Mark. That's not what's
Yeah.
been said.
Excuse me.
You have three factors. You've seen the report. You've read the statistics on it. You had one scored 44 and the other one scored 43. That's less than 2% differential. The part that was brought out is their study just kind of flushed it out and said this construction cost. And the next step, obviously, is to make just some clear-cut things. Can they actually go to Turner Park, for instance? Is it even feasible? And that's what they're doing now, is just trying to get the blocks up and say, is it feasible to do it or not feasible? There's just a recommendation. I mean, they're actually in the process of doing some of the work that we would have to do.
well, but for me, there's a fundamental better question of what is the financial priorities of the town?
What's this got to do with financial priorities of the town? There's nothing been presented before this board.
Because we're talking about an option that would clearly cost more money than based on...
No, you don't know that. Nobody knows that. It was the estimate on construction alone, but we have no idea.
that was, so we do have an idea. We don't have a definitive idea, but based on the report, we do have an idea. You know, well, we have an idea. I guess my question is, why do a report if we weren't going to listen to the report anyway? I mean, it was and that's what frustrates me. This report was you know, pardon the expression, but this report was a sham. You know, it was a waste of $10,000.
Okay, really.
No, but it was a waste of $10,000 because everybody knew where it was going to go before it got there.
That's not true. When am I going to be allowed to speak?
It certainly appears that way, Marie.
No. When am I going to be allowed to speak?
In a minute. Okay. I'm going to once again say what I said before. This board has shown absolutely zero interest in this project till tonight. And now to be professing that something's been happening behind the scenes, I think is highly inappropriate because we have not been involved with this process and we had ample opportunity to get involved with this process. We've chose not to be, and I think to us to load baggage up and sidewind everybody now that they're doing wrong is inappropriate because they've been going along as they thought they should have been going along, and they've been doing a pretty dedicated job. And it's not a waste of money, Mark. I would adamantly disagree because that money, feasibility study is going to have to be held on whether we can build a facility or not. Actually, going to Pioneer Valley Planning Commission for $10,000 was likely the most inexpensive we could have got for a report that we got back. I mean, they gave us the other reports were $35,000, and they were basically rubber stamped from all the communities with a demographic. So I think we got a fairly inexpensive report. Does it have all the details we want? No, it doesn't. But we only paid $10,000 for it. Mm-hmm. I know people out there are shocked that we said we only paid, but folks, these studies can easily cost you $35,000 or more for the details and some of the background research that we were asking for, or that they were asking for by the Warren article in this report. I don't think I'm speaking out of line, am I, Stephen, on what we've been having, the conversations?
I want Marie to go first.
And Marie? Yeah, Marie, go ahead.
As the liaison on the COA board, I'd like to be able to speak to it. I have been there at the very beginning and involved even from the task force. And I think that there's been a very thoughtful process going forward. There was never a decision before they even did the report. And after the report came through, they asked the report, the first draft, to go back and look at what is the obstacles to the land and use of the land. And so they went back and they restructured where the point system was. But even after that, they said, we really feel we don't have enough information. And such as, what is the cost of renovation here? What is the cost in Turner Park? Is there really things that we're not even considering in preparation of the land? What is the ability to use Turner Park? The concerns they had about Greenwood is if we really do renovation, are we going to be shutting down Parks and Recreation and the camps for a whole year? Are we going to lose daycare for a year? These are questions they said we really want to have answered. So when they're dividing into the groups and they're going into to get these answers, and once they have these answers, they're going to be coming forward to the board with a full report. They haven't even given up on the library property. They're saying we're going to continue to find out more information on that. So this is still an informational gathering area. It was encouraged that they do pick a number one choice to go forward on so that they're not all over the board and they still are focused on one area. Everyone in that board did vote for Turner Park to be the first, but they all agreed that we were still going to keep their eye on the ball on the various options so that if they came across and found that this wasn't going to work, that they would see where the other options were. And we have seen what's been going on in every step of the way. And I don't think there was any attempt on that COA board to take this issue and run with it and then force a decision down the select board or even the town. I think they're talking about once they get more of this information on what the costs are going to be and what the estimates are in building, they're asking for people to come in and look at the Greenwood. Then they're going to come back and they are going to report to us, just like they want to have public forums. They very well know they could go out on the public forums and they might hear something else from the public than what they are considering. But it's been a thoughtful process. Everyone's been working together to try to move this along in a timely but not a rushed manner. And I don't think that you could say that that board and those people that threw anything off the board, and they weren't even considering renovation, because they were and they still are, as they know is an important possibility. But I think they've brought up some very interesting ideas, and when they're ready, they will come and make their presentation to the select board.
Thank you, Representative for the COA. I'll make one
Thank
statement,
you.
then you
Go
can have
ahead.
it, Mark. I'd like the conversation has come up, so I think it's appropriate for the board to be thinking. Is it to the point now where you would like to set up an official task force for this effort to be done? Somebody has to do all that's being done right now. And I don't really think it's being done behind the board. I think it'll be in front of the board. It's going to have to all come before the board. But we certainly could, at this point, you could set up a building committee for it and have people get involved. But there's a lot of questions yet to be answered, even about the feasibility of being able to build at Turner or even over at Greenwood. And so it's a point there's going to have to be research done now. There's going to have to be deed checking and that kind of stuff. And it depends on whether we would like those people to continue on with this independent effort on fact-finding or us take it over as a board directive. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I'd just like to address your comment that up till this point, nobody on this board has showed any interest, and I absolutely agree with you. And in fact, if you look back in last July, when we started talking about the 10 or 15 most important things for the town, this didn't make it into that top 10 list for us. And it wasn't until the point where there was a citizen's petition to fund this study that we started talking about it. And I guess my question is, and pardon my comments here, but you know, do 85 or 100 or 185 people in town turn the direction of the select board, even if those 85 people happen to be mostly members of the Council on Aging? You know, and of the things that we need to do, where does this sit with our overall town priorities? And so having just said that, Richard, my answer to the last question you asked is, do we want to form it? My answer is absolutely not. We have, in my opinion, far larger priorities for the town to do than to pursue this. Now, that's my personal opinion, and because I truly believe that absent the citizens' petition in November, we still wouldn't be talking about this.
Alex?
I just wanted to dovetail on what Mark was just saying. I'm actually much more favorable to the idea of a renovated or new senior center. But when we're talking about studying it, again, I'll say this one more time, long-term capital plan, so that we can start thinking about the relative priority of the senior center against everything else. I think the reason why we haven't been discussing about, because we haven't been thinking about all our capital needs together. So I'll say it one more time. You know, it seems like, you know, the only logical reason not to look at all your capital needs is because you're afraid you're going to find out what it says, you know, which is, and you don't want to grapple with the issues. So I would love to have that conversation about where the senior center rates versus middle school versus DPW facility versus sidewalks versus everything else we have to do in town.
Okay. Yes, Paul.
I just want to disagree with you a little bit.
Okay, go ahead.
You said, no, because you
Go
said
ahead.
no one in this board had any interest in it.
Yeah.
Once it became a citizen's petition, it was passed, it became a town project.
It did.
And I think I've actually raised questions about the handling of it and what was going to happen. And in fact, when the draft report came out, I asked if I could see the draft report, and they said, no,
Yeah.
it'll be on a future agenda. So
Right.
I don't think, I think the process has been going through. I don't, maybe Mark, you know, I'm not putting word, but maybe someone isn't interested in it or is or whatever. But I don't think that's true. I mean, I've asked a lot of questions about the project, the process, and I know the town managers answered them at some of the meetings, and you and I have had conversations
Yeah.
about it. So once it was funded at town meeting, it became a town project. Whether you support a council on aging or not, it's not the issue. It became a town project, and it should be discussed at this level because there was a report done and findings were made. And I think the discussion should be is this something we want to entertain as we go through the next budget season and the town meeting? Because I don't think that it's going to be a yes or no answer. And I don't think it should be something that is laid on the table and then 6 months from now we pick it up again and another. That's what my point was when I brought it up. I wasn't saying that council on aging shouldn't be involved. They're the advocates. It's us to decide whether or not it should be something that we want on the town meeting and that type of thing. That's what I'm asking. That it should be a future agenda item that we make those kind of decisions on it.
Okay, I guess my correction would be that the board as a body has not taken up this issue. So you're right, we have had discussions, Paul. But I mean, as a body, it's never been before.
Correct. I agree with you.
And it is interesting because, we wouldn't have had a new high school if there hadn't been a special interest group get behind a new high school and start to push it through. These items have to start. There has to be a genesis for these items. I'll give you a second. And maybe it comes from our rep for the COA. Maybe that's where it should have come in from. That's likely the most appropriate place where it should have come in from. But this item hasn't been able to get, as displayed here tonight, there's not too many seams of support that would push this thing forward. So it's kind of a mystery on how some of this stuff does get up, other than you get public opinion coming up. And at least now we know by the study, and I give credit to the study of the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, that our facility will not meet the needs of our senior population in the next 15, 20 years. It's not going to need it. Our population, we now know the demographics, how quick it's building. It's going to be a very large, it's going to be 30-some% of our community by 2020. And our facility over there was designed for an elementary school. I mean, people have to understand, even if you get down to the basic plumbing, the urinals are on the floor down there. I mean, it's never been converted. They strictly took the building and adapted it for use by the seniors. Well, sometimes you have to get graphic. I mean, but you folks have to understand.
It's not like
It's not like
Fenway Park in the 70s and 80s.
Little guys and little people have toilets that are closer to the ground, and that's what you have there. It's never been updated to be a senior center. If when it was taken over, they would have spent a couple of million and turned it into a renovated senior center, it would be one thing, but it's not been. Well, we are spending a lot of money. We have 1,000-amp electrical service over there now. We're just spending $70,000 on a new kitchen. They spent how much on the over 60 room. So there is improvements being made, but I guess the fact is, Paul, kind of what you and I talked about a lot, and even Alex, you're saying the master plan. There is not a master plan in place that has every need of our community. And I wish there could be, but I don't think it's even possible to get it all together, because by the time you get it built, you have to start building it again because it moves that quick. The sands are slipping that quickly on you. I'll get off the soapbox. Go ahead, Marie.
Well, I do have to disagree that the select board has discussed a new senior center. I think it was on one of the goal lists back in 2011. And we have been discussing what are we really doing with the Greenwood Center. Every year we've been putting in $100,000, maybe more, whether it's a roof or something else. So it's something that I think has been in the back of our minds for a long time, but there's been a lot of needs in town, and one always bumps the other out. And finally, the task force brought it forward, saying we really have to have a board-wide discussion. We need to move forward on this. And they were able to get this study, and I think it is instigating more discussion. But I think it has been discussed on this board before, many years before. It was on a goal list, and it's just been overwhelmed by other needs. And hopefully the time has come to really talk about it, so it would be nice for next agenda.
One real quick, and then I'll give it to you, Stephen. The discussion has come up of what are we going to do at Greenwood. That has come up. And that was even come up from the Capitol when we were talking about replacing heating plans. New senior center was actually on the list, too. And the electrical system, we said, what are you going to do? And there was talk about turning it into an emergency dispatch center or backup when there's been a lot of things, but it was never a funnel discussion.
No, we had a new senior center was actually on, and it was what he called, I think when Mark was doing his lists, and it was on a list that the board had put together. But the list was at least 25, 30 items.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Stephen, you had a comment?
Well, I just think and maybe this is a good segue into the goals, because I think it's the comment about capital planning. I mean, we do 5-year capital planning, which is what the charter calls for. You can lay out longer term ones. I did actually spend some time researching 20-year capital plans for municipalities, and
They're really nice, aren't they?
The few that I was able to find that they are, well, I mean, it's to some extent it's formulaic. After the first 5 years, the entries into the spreadsheets drop off quite a bit. I've been asking other managers and other people and municipal officials and to take the board's comments to heart, and no one I've spoken with utilizes a 20-year plan or sees any direct benefit. And I think I'm trying to look at a way to do one. I think the problem is the time and effort it takes to produce a plan for a 20-year plan versus the utility you get out of it it's inversely proportional. That said, we do lay out our capital needs for 5 years, and then this gets the discussion of what is a capital need. You could look at the kitchen at Greenwood as a capital need, because we're going to eventually fail our inspection by Greater Springfield Senior Services, who provides our grant for our meals program, and we would no longer have a meals program. So that was determined to be a need. A new senior center, in some people's minds, may be a need. In some others, it may not be a need. We have a senior center that is functional, that 60% of the respondents said they were happy with, and that does programming every day. The population is going to grow. The senior population is going to grow by, I don't know, 20% or whatever.
Pretty good percentage.
Yeah, it's going to grow by a significant percentage by the year 2020. And if we do nothing to Greenwood, the same number of people that use it today are going to use it between now and 2020. The question is it a need to make it so more people will use it? And like I said, I think there's an honest case to be made in both regards, but because the select board had not made that as a goal or determined to be a capital need and done more of the short-term fixes as capital needs, people did the citizens petition. And that's not, like I said, it's not right or wrong. I'm just kind of recapping what I know about the issue since I've been here. So I think in terms of laying out a capital plan, it's the one thing we need to consider is what is a need. And, you know, even this PVPC report said the Greenwood Center, as it currently exists, is not a viable solution long term. It didn't say it's no good today. And that's where I think, when we talk about the overall needs, that needs to be taken into consideration as well, because there are limited resources. We are annually, when we do the capital plan annually, we are balancing replacing a kitchen versus doing more sidewalk versus, when a road or a culvert or something is in failure, you know it, and that's a need. And so we're always going through that exercise, and that's why we have a DPW facility that's been talked about replacement for, 25 years, because annually the needs get reshuffled.
Richard?
Yes.
I think that is part of the problem in planning on the town side that makes it so we can't move forward. We have to have a vision of where we want to be in 20 years. We have to have a vision of what we want our town facilities to look like. Now, the schools do that. Now, if we had that same line of thinking with the schools, there should be no middle school. We can just keep fixing the middle school we have. There's no reason to say that's a need, that's a want. And so when the town wanted a new high school, that really wasn't a need. It was a want on what they wanted the vision of the school to look like, where they wanted to be in the future. And we have to find a way that we also start doing it, whether it's a town-wide plan, if it's a building committee, the facilities committee that you've been putting together, that says, all right, we want to have a new facility in 20 years, in 15 years, and this is how much where we want to be. We don't want to be where we are today and make it sufficient. We want to make it sufficient for what we view Long Meadow will be in 20 years. And I think we have to find some way of bringing that into our planning. If not, then the schools will always have the better facilities, and we will keep just catch up in trying to patch together electrical here, a roof there. The amount we've put into Greenwood's been huge the past 5 years that I've been on the board. And so that's almost been a decision by default that that's what we're going to be doing. And I don't know how we bring vision back into planning.
You can do some of this, like Steve and I were chatting when we were going up to look at the DPW complex, is possibility of getting into strategic planning too, because we're not doing that. And some of these processes will come out of strategic planning workshops. They will just emanate from it, and you can change a new direction and set. I don't think we're to gain much by further talking on this issue at this point. It doesn't seem like we've all pretty well set our piece. We know where it's at. I will throw this on the next agenda and get this back on the agenda so we can maybe make a decision on where we want to go. What is the true feelings of the board? Is the board fairly well in agreement with that? Okay. So yes.
Could you expand that agenda item to not just be the senior center, but this idea that you had come up with the building facility committee? I thought that if that could be on the agenda, it'd be nice to be able to vote and talk about that.
We can put that into.
Yeah, I think to build on, for the board's edification, one of the lessons learned from our visit to Westford was that they have, and I think it started as a part of this DPW facility effort, but they have it now as a standing committee, and is basically a town building committee. And so basically, it's a committee of people who have expertise in engineering or architecture or construction trades or something like that, and they basically advise the town on building projects for municipal buildings. And so when something comes up for school or another building that the town of Westford wants to do, this building committee has the expertise to kind of review and advise the town and kind of be a level of advice and oversight that I thought, given the building projects that we're looking at in the near future, it was really a great idea, and we will be making a recommendation on establishing one of those in the near future. So yes, I do think that in this context, the DPW facility, the COA, a middle school, and then there was one more that may be coming up as a building project. All could really benefit from a standing committee that brings continuity and kind of economy of scale to this effort.
And they can do a little more research on all these items. And Ms. Ross, who is the manager up there, spoke very favorable of this. And by the way, this is an independent type committee. This is not made up of staff from the town. This is a committee from the community that advises her.
It's like a capital planning committee, but just really specifically for town buildings.
Yeah, anything on the capital, anything over $50,000 on a new structure, this committee kicks in on. So it's a fairly, she spoke very, very positive of that committee.
Yeah, I definitely think we'll definitely be pushing or putting forward a recommendation for that.
We'll get that on.
Okay.
Let's slip and get Mr. Paul up in front of us, get the debt policy draft going so we can let him go.
Thank you for bringing hard copies, I guess. It was sent to you by email just recently.
Richard?
Yeah.
Could I just, before we get too far into it, since we literally got it as we're sitting here. Does it make sense for us to be discussing this and spending time in open meeting? Why don't we take the time to read it in the interim, and then we can decide to vote on it?
Would you guys like to just give us a briefing on it for the committee that produced it? We don't have to go into details, but give some logic on what you do.
Mark, you want to?
Yeah, why don't you just talk about it a little bit? Familiarize us.
Paul can tell you. This isn't the first time the debt management policies come before the select board. It's the first time this version of it has. When it last came through here, there were a lot of comments, and so what you see here that is substantive, I guess, is a couple of the bullet points and the numbers changed, and clearly it's the second bullet point, which is the average life of general debt should not exceed 10 years, and what our new debt issue target should be. The fourth bullet that says 2.5 excludable debt won't exceed 10%. That number was under variation. And finally, the fifth bullet, which is the town will endeavor to have general fund debt service as a percent of general fund budget, operating expenditure no more than 12%. Enterprise debt fund is issued as general obligation debt, that the enterprise debt fund service will be added to the general debt fund. Those are some of the things I think that were the highlight. We've also talked about the next one is, should the percentage of debt be below 3%, the dollar amount will be added to the general stabilization fund. But really, that's really the changes from the last time we saw this. The other, I think, important things are the use of bond anticipation notes and our goal to not issue debt where, and this has a minimum of $250,000 based on perception that the cost of issuing the debt becomes a considerable burden on the overall.
And we took out some shalls and things like that.
Right. So, Paul, I don't know, is there, yeah, thank you.
The only other thing that I would add is the Finance Committee actually had come up with a debt policy on their own prior to this. And the subcommittee here took a lot of the bullet points that were already in your budgetary policies that exist currently, and they merged the bullet points that already are on record of the Select Board with a lot of the bullet points that the Finance Committee had drafted, and kind of merged them together and put what you see before you today. Kind of taking the best of those both worlds there and putting them together in a format that they wanted to keep, which was more of the bullet presentation as opposed to a lot of the text. You may recall that the debt policy written by the Finance Committee had a lot of text involved, and this is, again, this was narrowed down to a page and a half with bullets more than anything. But again, a lot of these, if you actually look at your budget policies, you're going to find the exact same wording or similar wording. They might have been tweaked a little for percentages or something like that already exists in your budget policies. And once this is adopted, I'm going to recommend that we go back into your budget policies and revise those so we're not duplicating some of those bullets.
Yeah, right.
Is there anything the Finance Committee recommended that we didn't pull into this debt management policy?
I would have to research that, Maria. I don't off the top of my head.
Oh, on these.
We had some contradictions within the policy itself that we took out. You know, we had one thing that said you should do this, and then the next line or 4 lines down said you should do this, and we had a lot of discussion about what the conflicts were within the policy itself, and took those out to make it cleaner, and places where, you know, instead of having words that say shall, because obviously in the policy is a policy and it's guidance more than anything. And I think that this captures what the Finance Committee wrote, or what their policy said along with ours. I don't think there's anything substantive that we dropped.
Yeah, I don't think so. Now that I look at it, there's, you know, bands in aggregate should not exceed 25% of the town's debt limit. 25% of our town debt limit would be $25 million in bands. That would have been in the Finance Committee's recommendation. There's just a few others that I would say are just probably stretching a lot of detail and minutia per se. Town will not authorize debt for less than $100,000. And here this committee went to the $250,000 limit. So there are a couple things that were not included. If you like, I can certainly forward the Finance Committee's recommendation prior, so when you do have another discussion, if you wanted.
That's a good point, because that's one of the vagaries. It's one of those things that's out there, $25 million in bands. You might do that with the high school project, and it might exceed $25 million. And, so we kind of went through that where we exceeded our own policy limits, and the Finance Committee went back and revised their policies to allow for the special project. So those were some of the things we thought that are very rare and aren't going to happen, and it actually made the Finance Committee go back, saying you can't have $25 million in bands, and if you do have some of these big projects coming down the road, you might have $25 million in bands. And so, and I guess you can still violate the policy, but you don't want to, and that's what we try to eliminate, those things that were really out of the norm, and just bring it into, crisp, clear, and trying to make it, my recollection of the discussion was that we were trying to tailor this to what we're seeing and what we're doing. So as opposed to saying, well, we don't want to do this and we don't want to do that. And this is really what we thought got down to the just crisp and clean, and really this is what we see the effects of today. And I think there's things in here like the 3% limit, because we sat there and did calculations of what would that mean. And we went through some numbers with Paul and said, would we ever get there, and those kind of things. And I think this is more, no, it's not offending the finance committee, but I think it's more realistic than what their policy was in a sense of, here's to what we're doing.
Their policy was actually 3.5 pages. So you can see it was all bulletized and narrowed down. But again, I can forward that out. So if there is something that catches your eye that's omitted, you guys can have the discussion.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the substance. Like, is there anything here that really concerns you about being restrictive, such as the target for general debt shall not exceed 10 years? Or anything like that?
No, that.
That was his ideas?
There's certain percentages in there that, we're fine with the percentages. The percentages came off Standard & Poor's recommendations of what are feasible limits. And where it says, I think it's 10 to 12, where's it 12%? Where it says no more than 12% of our general fund debt. I mean, we're actually at 7.5% right now.
Okay.
So we have a little leeway. If we actually went with the water and sewer and combined them all, we're just over 9%. So we're in pretty good position with how this is worded currently.
Okay.
Does this reinforce our position somewhat on some of the deficiencies we talked about on the GFOA?
This would, because the GFOA does require or wants to see specific policies in a lot of areas. So yes, this would address GFOA standards.
Okay, so this takes one more duck and
This would
knocks
be
it
one more
okay.
thing to put into the package. Again, specific policies addressing the different criteria of municipal finance.
Okay. Alex, you had mentioned, do you have a desire to postpone a vote on this till next meeting?
I do. It's just,
Okay.
I literally.
We will.
I mean, there's a lot in
Yeah,
this.
we'll go ahead. We'll go ahead and postpone the vote till next meeting. I'd like to add one other thing, too, that possibly the folks out there aren't aware of. This type of effort is coming forth because of subcommittees that we have on the select board. This particular subcommittee is the finance subcommittee, which is Mr. Gold and Mr. Santinello, that has worked on this with our town CFO and with our town manager to redo these policies. So I think it's safe to assume a lot of times without these subcommittees, these things wouldn't be happening. We would talk about them a lot, but they wouldn't happen. And now they're happening. So I think there's some real benefits to the efforts. There's a lot of efforts that's being put on projects after hours that aren't in front of the audience. Marie and Alex are dealing with operational issues, and we've got a policy of theirs that's coming up. So these help the town manager manage the town much better. I had a smirk out of Stephen. So anyway, thank you guys for helping on this. Paul, thank you. Any other questions that anyone had? Okay, thank you, Paul. So we'll put it on the agenda for next one. The agenda's getting bigger. We may have to get 2 meetings. Traffic calming. Traffic calming. Why don't we jump on the traffic calming?
Before we begin, could I just say something on this?
Sure.
First of all, Alex did a fabulous job. He worked through a lot of towns and pulled this together, and I didn't spend as much time working on it. And I sat down, we did it in the subcommittee, and then I tried to read through it afterwards because I got it just as we were sitting down. So what I did was when I did an addition to something that we didn't have a chance to talk to in the subcommittee, I put italics and bold, and something that I pulled out, I put parentheses in bold. I'm not wedded to anything I put in here, and I don't want anyone to feel that was something that was a part of the subcommittee. So those things were just discussion points going forward, but it's not really part of the original policy that came out of the subcommittee.
And I said I sent you guys an email about 5:30 this afternoon. I sent a draft. I've been working on a draft of this, and I reworded a lot of it. So it's just for for absorption and consideration. That's all was my thoughts on when I read through your policy. And I thought it was good policy. I went through and rearranged some stuff and dropped some stuff the way I do it.
And you didn't print out copies?
No, I did not print out copies
Okay.
because we're not going to make a decision tonight.
Okay.
I gave you electronic copies, and I said I would mention at the meeting that I sent you electronic copies at 5:30 this afternoon. I also sent a copy to Debbie so she can put in correspondence. It's just because it went to all select board members.
So, Richard, what's the process by which we go from the draft we got? You had comments. I actually had marked up a copy that I have comments on. It sounds like, Marie, you marked up
Yeah, this is
a
comments.
version
Yeah.
that you have comments on. How do we then integrate these into where we want to go?
I think the appropriate way is to give them back to the committee and let them look at it. It was their policy that they brought forward, and I made I made a lot of recommendations.
Actually, I quickly did a red line compare. What you sent out was sort of extremely different.
There was some significant
from what we did. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess I've always been a little skeptical about the value subcommittees, and this sort of reinforced it. Because if everybody wants to draft it, then then we can all sit down and spend 5 hours wordsmithing every word.
Which is how the deck policy ended up with the subcommittee.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm not really sure how we move forward because, I don't know, maybe you need to take it over.
No.
Because
We did it before. We got a lot of
Right.
suggestions last time. Maybe we should just put something back out there that we've decided, and maybe it won't be any different from what we put out the first time.
Let me mention another thing, too. For the benefit of the people listening, you guys did the heavy lifting on this.
Well, Alex did.
You brought it into a robust policy that was sent to the board. And the only thing that we've tried to slide back to you is our personal, or in my case, my personal feelings on how I would take that information and write my own policy. And that's really what I did. It's not meant that that's what you adopt or anything else. It was just my suggestions going back to the committee for consideration. As far as I'm concerned, the committee is the one that's going to bring forth the final policy for our vote. And it gets difficult to get all of our little pieces in, and I don't think everybody's going to get everything they want.
Someone from the subcommittee, there's two people in the subcommittee, if they believe in their policy, one can make a motion and they can second it. And then during discussion, if you and Mark or others have comments about revisions.
You could start trouble like that, yeah.
And then they can make motions to amend it and such and go through that process.
Yeah.
I mean, to Alex's point, why ask the subcommittee to present a recommendation if it's going to get sent back to committee? And just throwing out an alternative, because someone said, how do we move forward? And so I'm really answering that question. If someone wanted to make a motion and then through debate, if there are 3 people who think that it's presented just fine, it could go. I'm just making a suggestion.
Right.
Writing anything, particularly a policy by committee, is pretty tough. But I think that that you're right. Whether it was Alex or Marie or both of them, whatever, did the heavy lifting. And I think, Alex, the point is that I think that there is value in saying, here are some comments that hopefully they're a little bit more than spelling or grammar or whatever it is, that at least somebody thinks is of value to make this, I hope, more effective and readable. I'd love to have the committee go back and look at these and say, integrate them all together and say, we considered them all, and here's the ones we thought were good and we adopted. Here's the ones we didn't think were so good and didn't adopt. And we put it down as a single document with all these versions, and then we come back here, and at least we've got it a second pass through. I mean, because to me, the worst thing we can do is try to do that. We'll be here till next year's State of the Union message is over, not this one. So.
By the way, I could vote on the policy that you gave. Okay. It's not the fact I can't. It's just when I read it, there were some items that I would, if I was writing it, I would change, and there was stuff that there was some duplication, and I was trying to streamline it from the interpretation, because I wasn't involved in it, I sat and read the document and said, if I was actually implementing this document today, what questions would I personally have? And that's the only thing, Alex. It's just ideas to come back at you. And whatever you guys come back with is going to be presented for a vote. Okay? I mean, that's the main thing, is to get this thing up, and you did a great job. We need to move this one forward, but please take my suggestions as only suggestions, and anything else that anybody says. You agree, Mr. Gold?
Yes.
We may not get all of our things in there, and that's the raw parts of life.
There's a very good chance we won't have this ready for the next select board meeting, so we'll have to look to town. Okay.
That's okay.
All right.
That's okay.
I'll see if we can get together in the next few days, but I sort of doubt that's going to happen.
Yeah, and I would be more than happy to work with you guys, but obviously we can't.
Yeah.
Because it would be an open meeting
Right.
violation.
No, we did it last time. What was it the last policy we did? I don't even remember, but we got one in front of the board and it got through, and we had looked at the revision, so we'll...
I thought you said we had an open meeting violation meeting.
No. We did a policy before,
Okay, I'm glad
so
we cleared
we'll work
that up.
on that. Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, everybody content with that? Then, Marie, you guys could take Alex. Any other comments?
Nope.
Take it back, come back 2 or 3 weeks, maybe with the same thing? Okay? All right. So, town manager's trying to start trouble over there. Okay, so I'll put maybe 2 to 3 weeks. Okay, the only item that we've got left is if annual town meeting article submission memo, informational purposes. That was in new business. Mr. Town Manager, did you bring that forward?
I believe the administrative assistant put that in there, and that is under new business. Yeah, I think it's just a heads up about. It's never too early to start thinking about the annual town meeting.
True.
And so that is basically because some of the deadlines for articles. For department heads, it's the 26th of February. For citizen petitions, it's also the 26th, because some of those deadlines are within the month. I think the board, she wanted to give the board the heads up, but also give people out there a heads up about the petitions.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Gold?
So, based on that, I guess my question is, how did select board get select board sponsored or interested things into the pool of warrant articles other than through a citizen's petition? I mean, I'll give you the 2 specifics that our finance subcommittee spoke about when we were talking about water and water billing. The 2 things that I think our subcommittee is going to recommend that the board look at is changes to the way in which water is billed. And that's not currently constrained by bylaw that says it must be billed by usage as opposed to something else. And so there may be others, but I guess the question is, if individual select board members are interested, Richard, how do we get it before the select board to see if there's a sense of the board to make it a select board warrant article prior to the process?
Within this time restraint, it's going to be tough, isn't it?
Well,
we're looking at February.
I think, I
February
don't
26th.
think select board articles. The select board owns the warrant,
Right.
and so what has happened, at least since I've been here, is if there's an area like the zoning ones we put on, and they just go on a draft warrant. Mm-hmm. And then once the select board considers each article for the warrant, that is when it either becomes or does not become a select board article. And so I think we would, I think you could submit one to me, or to me for review by a department head. If it's a town, like the water issue, then we'd meet and go over it with the director of public works and the finance director, and kind of handle it on an internal level, similar to the DPW facility. Mm-hmm. And then it just ends up on the draft warrant, and then the board can decide when it's doing the warrant whether or not they want the article in there.
Marie, you look distressed.
Yeah, why so early? I mean, by having it February 26th, I mean, there's no chance that for even that bylaw group task force to be able to get together and decide if there's another bylaw change, or in the planning board would never, because it's sort of like right in the middle of the budget season, so it sort of blocks, unless you really don't want to deal with bylaw issues. It just worries me because it's now, what is it, more than 60 days? Didn't we say we didn't want it to be so far away, even citizen petitions? I just feel like all of a sudden we've got to rush.
This is the way it's been, I think, for many years.
Yeah,
I
but
will say,
last year we said, is it
last
really
year
right?
we were,
Yeah.
in part of some of our correspondence with town council, he had suggested that like at the end of February for citizen petitions was perhaps too soon of a deadline, because there is, it backs, the deadlines back out of the publishing date. And at the time the printer needs, and it's very administrative that way. It's really, but the town council did not recommend an alternative deadline for citizen petitions, and that's something we can certainly go back and look at the calendar, or see what happens with the deadline if it needs to be extended, or basically what you said was until the warrant is closed, citizen petitions shall be accepted. I think that's was the opinion we got. So we have an administrative deadline of February 26th. I think that's more just so we have time to process things and get them going. But people, obviously, we learned last year that deadline isn't necessarily hard and fast for citizen petitions.
Well, I'm not talking about just citizens. I'm talking about even town departments. We're talking February 26th. That
Well,
just
they've had
seems
all
tight.
year to be thinking, though, Marie.
Yeah, but I was.
Well, no,
yeah.
that's department heads, I think, to me.
Oh, to you.
To me.
So in other words, the task force still could get together and pull together bylaw changes for the Springtown meeting, because that's my concern, is that there's no way we can get this done.
They're just recommendations, and then we put them. We have a Word document. We put the draft articles on, and then the board gets to review them.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alan.
problem I've got with, I guess first of all, on the agenda it says informational purposes. I don't understand why this is not squarely within the purview of the select board, because we're the ones who are going to decide the warrant. And to tell citizens, on town letterhead, thou must get your petitions in by February 26th, but then we privately say among ourselves, well, if it comes in later, then I guess we got to take them too. What you've got is people being misled. So let's say, can I finish?
Yeah, you made a wrong statement, though. I want to make sure we correct it.
Can I finish my thought?
I'll add them.
So let's say on March 1st, somebody says, geez, I want to have a citizen's petition. And then they look at this memo and says, well, I guess I'm too late. I guess I'm not going to go collect the signatures. Whereas if the person understood the facts as they are, they could go out and get their signatures with enough time to meet all these publishing deadlines. So I don't know why we would put something out there that's really misleading and wrong, given the legal requirements that our town council told us last year.
Wait. Let me correct one thing you said that's wrong. Citizens' petitions can be submitted anytime. Period.
Then why are we telling them February 26th?
Okay, now give me a chance to talk.
Okay.
We open and close the warrant for administrative purposes, but a citizen's petition can be submitted at any time during the year. If the warrant is closed and we get a citizen's petition, it goes on the shelf and it sits there and it waits. And if we reopen the warrant, it automatically is put on that warrant. Automatic. There's no way. We cannot deny a citizen's petition. But once we close the warrant, they are no longer accepted for that current warrant.
I just want to look on the calendar here.
That's correct.
I want to confirm that this memo, as you can see, if you read a little further, says that the targeted date for closing the warrant
is
March 2nd, which is, I'm going to guess, a Monday. And so I'm going to guess February 26th is it's the Thursday. So we could certainly change. And again, we want to make sure the town hall staff has the time to get it folded into the warrant, the draft warrant, so it can go into the packet on Friday morning that you all get to close the warrant on Monday.
But we didn't close it until later, and our town council until you're faced with an actual administrative requirement, which is much later than March 2nd. Let's be honest. Then there's no basis to shut out citizen petitions before that date. I think David Martell was clear about that.
But what he was also clear about was when we close the warrant, it's closed. The question is, when do we have to close the warrant for administrative purposes? To print it, to get it?
Right.
Right.
We can't arbitrarily say, today, we're going to close the warrant, right? I mean, like, we couldn't bring a motion, like, right now and say, you know what, we're going to shut everybody out.
Well, I think we can't because we have to give notice that we're going to close the warrant.
Well, but even if you
But the point is, Alex, I think once we establish the administrative date to close the warrant, A, we ought to make sure we follow that date, and B, make sure that that date is truly the administrative date that we need to close the warrant.
It's driven by the necessity.
Right, and I will tell you that in past years, we went through all this stuff about, does the printer really need 4 weeks, or does the printer only need 2 weeks? And, does the reminder need to have it this far, And the answer is, you go by what we're told. And when the printer says, I need 4 weeks, maybe the printer can do it in 2 weeks, but if they tell us 4 weeks and that's our best understanding, that's what we put in. So my take is, the target date for closing the warrant or the date, maybe it's scheduled to be March 2nd. But it doesn't mean it's going to be March 2nd.
But last year, we were changing the warrant, which meant that nothing was getting printed. As long as we were changing stuff, nothing was getting printed. And we were opening
the warrant to do so.
Right. But the point is that if we're changing stuff, that means nothing's getting printed, which means that necessity date is no sooner than the day that we were last making changes. That's got to be true, right? Because so if we are changing warrant articles ourselves, that means that it's not necessary to shut off citizen petitions.
So you want to add a sentence in here that says, however, the warrant may remain open longer if the select board chooses to do so? Because that's exactly what the
I guess what I'd like to find out is what really is the drop-dead date.
Well, and I'm perplexed by the assertion that we're denying citizens representation on the warrant. I don't know where this came from.
Because you're telling people that you can't do it by February 26th, and people will believe it.
The warrant's been open since we had our last town meeting.
I know, but they may, again, my hypothetical, let's say on March 1st, somebody looks at this and is like, I guess I'm too late. And as what happened last year, let's say we're still tinkering with the warrant into late March.
I got one more question.
You've told people that is a period of time they could have gotten a citizen petition.
Right.
And they're being misled into thinking they can't.
I'm puzzled on why you think everybody waits till the 1st of March to decide they're going to put a petition in. I guess that's what puzzled me. I don't understand that.
Remember the Quint truck?
But that was a citizen's petition being driven by one of the select board members.
Well, that doesn't matter. But I mean the point.
Obviously, Marie knew the dates.
But the point is that it was into March, wasn't it?
The research. Yeah, 1 minute, Stephen. The research that we did last year. There was a lot of debate. We're doing this, that, and the other. And we found out across the Commonwealth, 90 days is an accepted factor at many, many, many municipalities.
But that doesn't mean it's legal.
We're not talking legal. There's no legal parameters to it.
No, that's what
they chose. But you stated that we were too soon, so I did a lot of research. I checked a lot of towns, and they basically had 90 days closure.
Yeah, we weren't told by town council we needed to extend our deadline. I just want to back up through, just administratively. And the other thing I'll say is this memo and the timeline set up here, I mean, this way has been done for a long time, way before my arrival. And a lot of it, quite honestly, is Paul Pasturzik is usually the one, because he's done this the most, is the one that usually comes up with this. Under the charter, it is, the warrant has to be delivered to every household minimally 2 weeks in advance. Now, the vehicle we use to do that is the reminder, which goes to every household. They need it, I think, either the Friday. So if 2 weeks is May 1st, because the timing is May 12th, and I might think shut off here to go to the calendar. I want to open my calendar so we can kind of track the weeks.
Do you have all the dates so you can back it up, Stephen?
I'm doing that right now. So May 12th is Tuesday, May 12th, the town meeting. So 2 weeks before that, 2 weeks before that would be the 28th of April.
And the reminder dates are how many? They're
And then they
But the
publish.
reminder's on Thursday, so you're going to have to then publish before that.
Right, but they publish on Tuesday or Wednesday, and I think we
Yeah.
have to get it to them the Thursday before because
Right.
they physically stick it into
Stick it in the paper.
in their papers. So we have to get. I think we have to give them a week.
Right.
So then you're back. If there's 8 weeks between, if there's not really, is about 8 weeks between the time we close the warrant and when it has to be in people's hands.
So you're up to the 21st.
Right.
Okay.
And then the printer needs, I think, 3 weeks.
So that gets you to April 1st.
April 1st, and so the month of March, the warrant gets closed, and as you know, it gets reopened to incorporate the capital plan and the budget and any bonding and anything else, the things that kind of go along as we go during the month. I'm guessing that the intent of this process, Alex, is to give the board the most control over the warrant, and I don't say limit citizen petitions. But citizen petitions can change, especially if it's a citizen petition to raise and appropriate or a transfer free cash. It can change the outcome or the complexion of other articles that have been developed by the board, like financial articles. And so I'm going to guess, if I can guess, why would they have it be such a generous deadline? It's to your point, the select board owns the warrant. And this gives the board the most control over it, while giving, I think, citizen petitions time to get their articles in, but then it gives the board time to process all of that, come up with its own articles, and make sure that the warrant balances out when it goes to print and goes to the residents. And I think that's an important thing. If the board wants to slide the petition deadline down or not close the warrant, as Mark said, we can do that. We can have a special meeting to do that later. This is the process that's always been followed, and I'm going to guess people before us decided that this was the way to kind of give residents the opportunity while also giving the board the most ability to make sure that they have a quality warrant that balances the budget and does all that other stuff that we're supposed to do. I don't know if that helps or not, but there is legitimately
No, I
5
get it,
weeks.
but I just look back at our packet, as at least as late as March 17th. Our March 17th, 2014 packet had a draft warrant in it. So the point is, we're still working on it. I can't remember exactly, probably you remember better, Marie, because the whole thing about the Quint truck, like it was like right around March 20th or something, right? We were still fiddling with it. So the fact that we're fiddling with it means you could put in another citizen's petition.
But we were right up against the wire, as I recall, and I think the deadline, and I think we actually had to push the printer on their deadline at the same time we were doing all of this, and it really came down to the wire to get the thing done. And we don't typically, this is a once a year thing we do, and you want to make sure you do it right, and kind of rushing at the end is not really the way to do it. And that's why the timeline that's projected builds in enough time to do it carefully. And you're right, can it go later and still get done on time and still end up in people's hands within the 2 weeks? Yeah, I think we proved that last year, but it was stressful. And like I said, there are administrative things that have to happen to the warrant after the board takes action. That does take some time. So
I think
you have to allow that, because the thing can't get published.
I'll get one thing. I think it's stressful. I remember the meetings. I believe it was 2 minutes before 11 when we finally approved everything that one night.
I think it was because the lights go out.
Yeah, the lights were going out. So you said how many days is possibly open? 30, and that doesn't count any of the tabulation time by our workforces and printing or putting it together and actually getting it up and getting it back to the board for review and all the internal reviews. That's not a lot of time.
No, internally, it was. Sorry, Marie. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wanted to say something. I actually thought your description was exactly what I was asking for when I said why the 26th. And what I found interesting is that it makes sense to want to know what the citizens' petitions are coming in before we decide on the budget. Because at the end of that budget, and March is our budget struggle, the whole month of March. And so that gives us only 2 weeks to decide. So if we do come in with a citizen petition that really could throw us off, we have to prepare for that. And that citizen petition could come from the school side, it could come from the town side. And so now it does make sense to me. Before, it never made sense to me why the citizen petitions had to come in so early. So thank you for that walking back. But I think I understand now.
Can I ask-
Sure.
I understand the timeline. been involved in it. There's a couple things I just want to throw out there. One is, this board typically takes no actions on citizens petition. That's number one. Number two is, if a citizen's petition's in there that says we want to redirect $500,000 from this budget to that budget, it's not going to have an effect on our budget whatsoever, because we're still going to vote the budget that we vote. If a citizen's petition comes in and says, we want to bond $100 million to build a new senior center, DPW facility, all the pipes underground, it doesn't matter to what we're going to do in the budget process, and we're going to set as a warrant article. So everything being equal, it doesn't matter what the timeline is for citizens petition, because sometime in March, we're going to open up the warrant to vote on it. And if there's a citizens, as Richard said, if there's a citizens petition on the shelf, it gets included in that warrant article. I think when we had this discussion, and like I said, I understand the backup, I understand the going backwards and figuring out the timeline. I still am puzzled, and I said this for years now, why a printer takes 3 weeks, but that's just me, because I deal with printers that get jobs out in a relatively quick period of time, and I know it's a big document, but that's a administrative issue. But the bigger issue is, I think that the February 26th deadline is meaningless. And you can have it in there, or you can make it March 15th. Pick a date. If you look at what's important is the date on which the select board votes on the budget. I'm sorry, on the warrant.
On the warrant.
That's the date to look at. So if that date's March 21st, then citizens petitions can be accepted up to then. And I think that's. My point is, it doesn't matter, because it's not going to affect how you're going to vote on the budget.
The only difference it would mean is just getting it in the warrant.
No, absolutely, right.
Yeah,
Just
getting the
getting it in.
administrative part done.
So, but my point is, it doesn't, because we don't take positions on them, because we don't, it's
Right.
not going to affect the budget that the town manager is going to recommend. It's not going to affect whether we have capital outlays or not, because we're going to vote on what we're going to vote on.
Right.
I don't see where it really matters. And whether it's February 26th or March 15th is the day that we're going to vote to close it, that should be the day that we accept articles at the very latest. Because even if they missed the February 26th deadline, and to your point, Alex, they go on March 1st and say, gee, I missed it, and they submit it, once we open it, it's on the warrant.
It's on the warrant.
And that's what, I mean, I think we all agree that's what Dave Martell said
Yeah,
happens.
automatically goes on.
Richard?
Yeah.
I just found Martell's opinion. He said, in my opinion, this has to do with last year, February 26, nearly 3 months before the meeting, unnecessarily limits the right of citizens to submit petitions. It said, I suggest for future annual town meetings, the select board decide on a realistic deadline that takes into account the lead time to assemble and print the warrant, but also takes into account the importance of citizens' right for placements of articles on a warrant. So I guess that's what puzzled me so much. We had our council literally tell us that February 26th was too early, and then we have something that takes February 26th again.
The council just provides guidance. We don't have to follow council's advice. We've proven many times on this board. But the point is, Alex, I understand what you said, but you just backed it up, Dave, or you said 30 days? There's actually about 30 days for the administrative review and workup?
Like I said, I started the conversation by referring back to Dave's sentiments there. I didn't read from it, but I agree with that. And Paul, your point's well taken. The board can choose to close. You close the warrant, but then you don't approve the warrant until closer to the deadline. But it's the closing of the warrant, and I think Dave's point, town council's point was, in past history, and I mean this has been done this way for, like I said, many years, perhaps the board closes the warrant too soon, and if the board wants to leave the warrant open while it's contemplating articles, rather than closing it, reopening it, I think that's fine. If that's a change from what we've been doing. And so I think laying out status quo is good, because we've now had a good discussion about the board's practice and what's fair and reasonable in town council's guidance. All we laid out is this is the timeline that we feel, based on past practice and the administrative needs to prepare the warrant, is a recommended timeline. The only thing I'll say is, to Paul's point about, if we're going to vote to close the warrant on March 16th, which would be 2 weeks after the March 2nd, that means that people can come in here in hand things, and then the clerk's office doesn't have any time to verify the signatures or do any of that stuff. Again, there are administrative processes that have to go into this that need lead time. And I get last year.
I agree. I'm just saying,
that's the point.
but I agree. I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
So
We can change the deadline. I'm just saying that it just can't be the select board meeting date is the deadline.
Right.
We have to have a few days built in on the front end to certify signatures, make sure it's in the Word document, and make sure that it's spell checked and worded right, and also that town council has had the chance to review. Not necessarily citizen petitions,
Right.
but regular articles. I mean, it is a holistic thing producing this warrant. So that's all I'm saying.
Is March 16th a realistic date to close it?
I personally think that I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's cutting it close. But if we can, we should have to talk to the printer and make sure administratively we can do that.
I mean, but based on what you just gave us, you've got here that it should be signed on the 16th.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously it's closed.
If you want to close it and sign it, again, this is just the past practice has been
Right.
close it, open it, close it, open it, close it.
Right.
If the board wants to change the practice and just close it and sign it on the same night, then I would say, well, then people can submit petitions up to the meeting, and then we're in that position of not being able to certify the signatures and everything else. But you can say administratively, please get them to town hall so the signatures can be certified and other things on the Thursday noon time before the 16th.
Well, your point's well taken on the certification of signatures, because that must be done for it to be placed on the warrant. Because it can't be fully accepted until that process is taken care of. So, and you're saying the 16th is a drop dead date on us to sign this thing. Backing up your calendar.
Backing out from the time that's been built into it in previous years, and plus, like I said, I want to say we had to push the printer to give us an extra day.
Yeah. So we wouldn't gain much.
In 2 weeks.
Yeah, about 2 weeks, maybe less than 2 weeks.
I just don't want people. To me, it was very anomalous last year that people who were sort of in the know that you could submit citizen petitions could go ahead and do that, and then John Q. Public, who actually is reading the documents we're putting before them, is thinking that he can't do it.
Right.
That just doesn't seem fair to me.
Okay. Did this go out?
No, that hasn't gone out yet.
Just it's internal.
Okay, it's all internal at this point? Because it's January 26, 2015.
The paragraph there that says citizens petitions, the alternative to what's down there is to put down some wishy-washy dates and wishy-washy words that say, well, you can submit a citizen petition up until the time the select board chooses to close the warrant for the last time. We think that'll be around March 26th.
Not the last time. Once it's closed, and that's where when Dave wrote that original
Right.
opinion, he was not aware that the warrant had been closed.
Okay,
and
so-
then he reversed it, as you recall.
Fine. So, we think that'll be March 16th or whatever it is. So get your and if it is, you're going to need to have your petitions in 4 days in advance by the Thursday before. I mean, that's the alternative, Alex. Is to
Right.
No, I
use
think
that
that's
kind of wording.
perfectly fine.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, right.
But
I mean,
it's not hard and fast. It's here's the dates we think they are. And if we're wrong, you may miss it if you wait till this deadline. You can start submitting petitions tomorrow. That's what it probably ought to say. You can start submitting citizen petitions tomorrow, and we think you can do it up until such and such a date. And if you rewrite that, that's...
You can always say citizens petitions are accepted at any time. If you want to get them on the Springtown warrant, they must be submitted 4 days before the closing of the warrant, which is right now
currently
scheduled for. Yeah.
Right.
Well, you'd have to check your dates to make sure that that's not the weekend, so. Because you need 4 days administrative time
Yeah.
on that.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
All we need to do for this is just say, the board just needs to say, we're not going to follow this timeline. We're going to target a warrant closing date of March 16th. Everything else backs up from there.
Okay.
Do it.
That's all you need to say, because again,
I guess if March 16th is the date, I think last year was the 21st. I guess, and I guess I'm with Paul. I am a little dumbfounded that it takes 30 days to print something like this. I mean, and I guess, I think that's something that is worth thinking about. I think sometimes you get, it's like, well, this is what we always do. We use the same printer. It takes 4 weeks. There's a lot of people that print. I think it'd be worth looking at to see if somebody could do better, or he or she could do better, to give us a little bit more time. But I mean, whatever that date, sort of drop dead date is, we back it up, as Mark said, 4 days, and that'll be the day that we advise people on for the citizens petition.
So you want to back it up 4 days and come back with new dates then, Stephen?
I think it sounds like I need to provide a report on why it takes 3 weeks. I mean, we bid out the service, it is what it is, and
we can
we don't
debate
print
that.
it. We don't print it in-house, so that's why it's not like us laying about not doing it. It's a contracted service. We don't even possess the ability to print it the way it is with the folded and stapled and all that other stuff.
I understand that. I mean, but this is
But for the purposes
a very
of this,
small document.
For the purposes of this warrant, though, I think we just need to readjust the date, and you can worry next year about the printer, find a new printer. I don't think we need an extra task to find a new printer this year. We got enough things, we got enough fish on the fire at this time. You agree?
That's fine.
Then we do it next year, we just move the petition back 4 days, citizens petition?
That's fine.
Then we can worry about the printer next year.
Okay.
I don't know.
So a citizen's petition is due March 2nd.
Whatever your dates are.
Well, no, if the board wants to, again, if the board
That's
wants...
4 days. That to answer your question.
Yeah, that's 4 days. If the board wants to close the warrant on March 2nd, that even if people bring
I think
citizen petitions to the clerk's office on Monday, March 2nd, before the warrant is published, you still have time to certify the signatures and things like that. I guess if it's the 16th, you still have time, but again, it gets tight, and there's a lot of work that has to go into it, and that's how mistakes get made on warrants by people trying to cram it at the end.
I would think for fairness to people, that if you have a date, that knowing what the law says, that if you open it up, it gets on there.
Right.
But if you have a date that says March 2nd is citizens petition, and with the intention that we're going to vote on the warrant on the 16th at the very latest, because you can't have it both ways. You can't accept the citizens, well, I guess you could have it accepted on the 2nd, but it'd have to be within business hours, and then it'd have to be brought here after the business hours, if we're going to vote on the warrant on the 2nd.
Right.
Sign it,
I guess, why wouldn't it be 4 days back from the 16th?
It can be. You just have to
So then why
decide
are
when
we
you want to
talking
close the
about the
warrant. I keep
second?
saying you just decide when you want to close the warrant, and we're just going to put out a deadline of the 16th.
That's all I was
Then we close.
Kathy says we should be closing at the 16th. We should be closing at the 16th.
Yeah, close
She's
and
not saying
sign.
that. It's recommended the 2nd. Debbie, the recommended, that this is projecting scheduling a closing date of March 2nd. And then sign it on the 16th.
And sign it on the 16th. Well,
Right.
to me, signing it on the 16th means until it's signed, she can't go to the printer.
That's correct.
So
But you can close it and sign it on the same night.
Okay, so we can
I
do the
think.
16th.
Right, that's why, of course you can close it and sign it on the same night.
And I think the one thing that I will say is that the board has never opened the motion without the advice of the town manager to add something to the articles or something. So I think that 2 weeks is important in the sense of there's some stuff that's going to come up, and it always seems that that's why we reopened it
Yeah.
before we vote on it. There's other information, dollar amounts or
Something
whatever it
comes
is.
out.
Well, and if you recall, last year we kept doing it because we were trying to, we dealt with everything except for one article, which was a capital article, and then we went back and discussed that at our I won't say capital expenditure discussion. So we went and opened up the warrant to add that correct amount of money. And if we do this sequentially, we should only need to do that once.
Right.
What's even scarier is all the work's got to be done between now and this date.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got all the dates in, Stephen? You can change it around and just go ahead and get the memo out then?
I'll run this up the flagpole and see if this is doable administratively and report back to the board.
Yeah. Can Nick give me an email notification okay for the board?
Sure.
Email notification from the town manager on that?
Yep.
Okay. So we don't have to come back to the meeting, just an email. Tell us. You're working on it. We'll get you closer. Okay. Okay, that issue we got down. Let's make sure our thing's here. I guess, if I'm not mistaken,
What days?
we're down to select board goals.
15, 12.
Have I missed anything? No, doesn't look like it. Okay.
Is that Thursday?
Are you talking about business
12,
days?
March 12th. No.
Or just,
Get some
yeah,
administrative dates
12th,
out of the way.
Thursday, March 12th.
Thursday.
And the 16th is a Monday.
Yeah, that's your regularly scheduled meeting.
And St. Patrick's Day is there.
My birthday's the day before.
Okay.
Oh. Look at that eyes.
You think that's what's there?
No, I think we need to run the executive session.
You want to skip this goals and get in executive session? Okay. The reason I put goals back on there is because last meeting we didn't get anything accomplished.
Our goal is to get the goals.
You guys didn't say what you really wanted to do, and again, it's on hold until the board decides what we want to do. We had some that we had agreement on, or partial agreement, or somewhat of agreement, and I need to know if you want to move forward with that list and vote on it, or tear it back apart, or what would you like me to do with it?
I'd like to make a suggestion if I
Yeah.
could. I mean, you can take the contents of the list, and I think now that we're 6 months into the year and things have been done, and, like tennis courts are done and that type of thing, items on the list are gone. I like to see, if we come back and it could be the same things that are on the list, that each select board member come back with their top 3 priorities of
Take
goals.
this existing list, Paul?
That list, or if there's something on there you don't like, but bring back 3 things. One of the things that, when Mark was chair one year, we did this thing, I think we did it for the goals, and I think that's what Marie referred to earlier, is that we took each of those goals then at that point and then just ranked them, and when you talk about, what's more important, and we ranked them against each other. And I think that if we, and you coagulated, if that's the right word, or coalesced or combined or whatever, all these things. You brought them all together and said, here's what and gave them a ranking. And the difference between that and what Mark had done was, you actually had to think about, is number 1 more important than number 2, and number 1 more important than number 5. And you go down that list, and it seemed to whittle it down to where you build a consensus as to what is the most important, as opposed to just our feelings on a particular thing, because you can have some discussion is that. But my recommendation would be to, for our next meeting, to either take 3 items that we don't see on that list and bring them to you, or say, okay, the list is fine, one or the other, and move forward and go through some sort of ranking system. And maybe you can talk to Mark and come up with something that says, okay, now the board takes these, these 20 items and determines the top 5 by ranking them, and not, but I mean, what I'm getting to is, I like to see the serious discussion about each of the pros and cons of it, as opposed to just saying rank them and then here's what the numbers look like. Because you might be able to come around with 4 or 5 things that say, okay, yeah, there's the general consensus of going forward.
A lot of that we actually did go through when we were talking about it,
Yeah.
Paul. Maybe not exactly what you're saying, but we individually ranked them, and then we just combined the rankings to get an overall ranking.
No, right, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'd like to do is then pit those goals against each other.
Okay.
Meaning, like, incorporate the system that Mark used, and then by doing that, you then have a discussion, and then maybe it's a separate meeting than the Monday night one, so you can,
Right.
really go over it. But you start having a discussion of something I see as a number 1 and you see as a number 4, and then you start to have a conversation amongst the board. And that's what I'm saying. Maybe that's where you then build the coalition around those top 4 or 5.
Well, then why don't we designate you as Mr. Goals instead of Mr. Gold, and I'll give you what I've got, and you do what you did before.
That's fine, as long as the select board's willing to commit an hour and a half to 2 hours to do that.
I would suggest, I guess when I saw our list together, what I thought of it as is you had a sense of what to put on the agenda, and the stuff that was at the top, you were going to put on the agenda more sooner than the things that were in the bottom.
Right.
I mean, it sounds like you're coming back to us to say, you want some feedback on how to hone that.
No,
a
you
little bit.
you guys all of a sudden reared up and said you didn't like what I was doing.
Well, no, I
So
didn't
that's
say-
when we
I didn't say-
stopped.
So here's my suggestion, because to me, we're more than 6 months into the year.
Yeah.
I mean, so we need to, and we got budget, so that we're
Right.
going to spend a lot of time on that. I would suggest each person pick one thing. So, I mean, if we have 3 times 5, then this whole ranking stuff, I mean, I'm just afraid we're going to spend a lot of time on process. We spent quite a bit of time coming up with the original list.
Right.
I would even, even though, this could, put something that I'm interested in, off the agenda, but maybe you could even make it, you could be even harsher. You can say, you bring in one thing, and the thing that you bring in has to be in the top 15 of the list that we have now, so that we're really kind of focusing on 2 or 3 things at the end of the day. Because all of these are pretty big projects.
Many of these are
So,
thought
I mean, it's
process
not
things.
like we're going to knock out 10 more goals, before June.
No, we already got 7.
Okay.
So we're doing pretty good, because some of them were picked up, like Paul said, by other actions.
Right, no, I understand. But, so, I mean, that's my point, is I think we really should focus, and that's what I'm saying, go with one.
I like Alex's idea of all us coming to one and maybe bringing the next step for that. So we could say, this is what I want to do, item 5, and this is what my suggestion for the next step on item 5 is, whatever item 5 is. So,
Yeah, but you've got to get the group to agree that that's the next item you want to work on.
well, if Alex says there's 5 of us, then we're going to come up with 5 items. That's
Okay, that's 5. Okay, I got a list that's got 12 items on it, so I can cut it down to 5.
Yeah.
But it sounded like you wanted to revamp these. That like the next one we had here was legislative outreach, and that's a big item. Grants, funding, deputy town manager, it's a big item. There was a lot of things in there. A lot of things that we're kicking around today is in that element.
I don't know if you're looking at me to
Mark.
recognize me, or you're looking at me.
Well, he went, "Oh." Go ahead, Mark.
That's right. There are a couple of thoughts here. I mean, Alex, you're right. We can. If everybody picked one, we'd come up with somewhere between 3 and 5 items, I suspect. I don't think we'd come up with 1 or 2 only. We might come up with 5 different ones. And if everybody picked 2, we'd probably come up between 4 and 10 different items that we had. But to me, it's not getting the items there, and it's not even agreeing on what's the number one item. It's with 4 months left in the fiscal year, it's what do we want to do on these items? Now, what is a deliverable? What is the goal in the last March, April, May, and June of this fiscal year on those items? And very honestly, what can we hope to accomplish in those 4 months?
And I think that's where Marie's point is a good one. Like, bring in your goal and then bring on what you're going to do, so that, we're having that discussion.
Well, it's that's fine. I think the goals needs to be either pretty modest, or we have to do an awful good job of resourcing the goals if they're going to be stretch goals in 4 months. I mean, let's get realistic here. It's not like there's nothing else going on in town for the next 4 months, with budgets going on in preparation for town meeting and all the other things we're already working on. So, and from what I heard is, we're not allowed to bring up as one of our items something that's already being worked on, because
I don't know.
It's already being worked on.
Well, I mean, I could.
Which is then becomes, to me, Stephen, you got 4 months to go. Here's 4 more things to work on. I mean, and oh, by the way, there's no more resources to do it with.
I do know what's happened though recently. We've spent the last month debating the goals and haven't done anything.
Well,
And we just stopped, and we actually were moving. We were moving forward in some of these items.
But even some of the ones, in my opinion, that we're moving forward with, as you said, do we have a unanimity or even a consensus or a thought by this group of, and I'll just pick one randomly, what is our goal with the DPW project by June 30th?
It's already been taken care of.
But what's been taken care of? That we've approved funds
Right.
For a study.
for the study.
But, so therefore, that's our goal, is to get this study.
It's the first goal to get that. The second goal is going to be to come back.
But back in last June, or
Right.
July 15th, if you had asked me what's our goal for the DPW, I might have wanted something different from that. And
You might have.
but that's all we're going to get right now, because that's where we are. The point, though, Richard, really is to say we're moving forward on them doesn't mean we're moving forward with the same success that we might have wanted to move forward with them had we had that discussion in July.
I've never seen us have much success on goals.
Well, that, and I don't necessarily agree, maybe not in this group, in this year, but in past years, by setting, by the town meeting, we want to have a warrant article to fund fund the purchase of land for a DPW. Had that been our goal in June or July, we may not have gotten there, but we've been working toward that goal. But we never stated
Our
it.
goal was to get to this first piece.
Your goal was to get to that first piece.
Our goal, we voted on these goals. I got the paperwork to show you exactly what
and
was
the goal-
shown to you.
And the goal was, all we wanted to do on the DPW was get a study.
To start the process, yes, absolutely. That was the first goal.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I-
the goals will forthcome after.
You see, I think it's too late. We're 4 months. We're
We have to
eight
look
months
to
into the year.
we have to look what we're doing the next 3 months.
You had a goal, was review and improve DPW operations, and that is being done through the study. Now, the review of the operations, we don't know if we improve them, but the review will be done. The second one was the DPW facility. We voted to move it from where it's at, so we progressively moved forward. Now, we've been trying to do that since 1987, so there was a lot of movement made on
That's
that.
fine, Rick. I'm not going to argue with you. I'm just, my experience with goals is that, if your goal is, I can have a goal to attend the MMA meeting, and that's a great goal, and I go to the MMA meeting, but I didn't get anything out of it except a nice trip to Boston, as opposed to my goal is to go to the MMA meeting and learn about something and come back and implement it in town.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, I've taken that trip to the MMA meeting and turned it into something actionable, and in each case, we need to be able to turn our goals into something actionable. And to some degree, we've done it, and to some degree, we haven't.
You act like you weren't part of the process.
And I don't
That's what
feel I was
amazes me.
I don't feel I was part of the process to some
Okay.
degree.
Okay.
On
I
goals.
wanted to go into executive session.
Okay. Well, we're not making any progress
we're
on the
not.
goals, so.
We're not.
Okay. Anything else before we adjourn?
No, we're going to, there's
Yeah,
executive
well,
session.
we got an executive
Okay.
session. Let's see, we vote for executive session before we adjourn? Motion to
Yes,
go
the
to...
Make a
Motion
motion to move into executive session for the purposes of approving minutes.
Second.
Not to resume into open session, I'm sorry.
Not to reconvene an open session. All in
Second.
favor?
Well,
Or
we-
second?
They got to go by
Second.
It needs
Do a
a
roll call.
roll call vote.
All right, Ms. Angelides?
Yes.
Mr. Gold?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Mr. Santinello?
Yes.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So
We just
that
did
was
that.
it.
No, we're going for motion to adjourn our regular meeting because we're going into executive
I
session.
just did.
That's
We
right.
just
Okay,
forgot.
yeah, that's right, we did. Okay, good night, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you on February, what is it?
17.
7th, no?
No, I'm sorry,
Our next-
2nd.
Yes, February 2nd.
I keep skipping meetings.
That's the day before our special town meeting. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a nice evening.
Okay.